Okay. Good evening. I'm Dave Neufeld. This is the meeting of the December meeting of the board, early December meeting of appeals. And we have today with us, we have Meg Jurgen is here, Greta Haney, Brian Gladstein, Robin Kramer, who's our chair, is not here today. And I am not the chair, but I'm chairing it this evening. And we've got our counsel, I believe. Has he gone away?
I'm here.
Oh, there are in the middle. Very good. And Dennis is here and Brittany is here. So we're all here. We have tonight, I believe, 3 public hearings and some other business. So we'll take them right in order, I guess. We start with 1258 East Boston Post Road, which is the application concerning Toyota. I call it Toyota. Is the applicant here on that? Okay. This is a property and is looking for a special permit for motor vehicle sales. And the hearing was opened the last meeting, and subsequent to that, we received a November 16th letter from counsel for the applicant with attachments, including some new plans. Some parking was changed on it a little bit, or at least the nomenclature was. So is the applicant here now?
I am. Was I moved into the meeting?
You are moved into the meeting. You have no video, but you have a voice.
So I don't have an ability to share screen. I think, I don't know how your board likes to handle that, but we did provide some further detailed architectural plans that showed a conceptual interior layout of the building. We did designate the parking spaces closer to the building as customer parking. We also showed the utility connections. In addition, we also provided, I believe it was a question from Greta, we provided the minutes from the prior use variance application that concerned not just this property, but the adjacent residential lot, as well as another lot that is also next door, but is split by the brook. Oh, hold on, I'm getting a panelist invitation.
Should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, I can share my screen now if that's helpful. And I can just scroll down. So the concept for the building is to look somewhat similar to the Toyota City main facility across the street. As I mentioned on the site plan, the utility connections were shown. The customer parking spaces would be designated here. We also provided details on the hours of operation, which would be 9 to 6 Monday to Saturday, and then 11 to 5 on Sundays. And I think the final piece the board had a question on, which I wasn't able to get more details for you, but I can tell you it was on the light fixtures themselves. The idea would be to have similar fixtures to those in use across the street at the main Toyota facility lot. And they would be on photo cells, so essentially they go on at dusk and go off at dawn. I think that was all the questions the board had. I'm happy to address any further questions.
Now, the cars here, this will be mostly used cars, is that correct?
It will be a mix of new and used, but yes, there will be a combination of the two.
Will you be doing any leasing contracts, leasing of cars on the lot?
Yes, I mean, I would imagine, I haven't had that conversation, but I would imagine it would be both sales and leasing. That's fairly typical.
Yeah, that's a permitted use. It's actually the way the code describes motor dealerships. It's buying and selling, but renting of cars. So we would have to say that you also have,
Are these renting or are these more leasing?
I think, what's the difference between renting and leasing?
Leasing is renting implies a short-term, daily, weekly, possibly monthly. Leasing would be over usually a period of 1 year to 3 years.
I'd say a lease is a rental contract with an option to purchase at the end. So it almost, in a way, is a sales contract with the trade-in value.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I just wanted to call out that you would be doing leasing.
Now, people Can you clarify something? Will the cars that are sold there, the sale of used cars, those will be the ones that are traded in there or from elsewhere as well? Because there is,
It would be trade-ins at the dealership. It
Okay.
would not be a used car lot like we're open, we'll buy and sell used cars. That's not the intent at all.
okay, so that all of the used cars would be cars that were acquired, were traded in at this particular dealership, correct?
Correct.
Which would include, when we call it a dealership, we're including across the street, correct?
I would think that would be the idea, yes. If there needed to be a limited, I mean, right now they're all in common ownership. If at some point in time it became separate ownership, this would be a standalone property that wouldn't be picking up used cars from some other place.
Oh, okay, so are these going to be operated together? Maybe I was under misimpression, I'm sorry. Were these going to be operated together, both sides of the street? Are they under the same ownership?
They are similar to the lot across the street on Sunnyside is also Toyota City. So they're all under the Integrity Automotive umbrella currently. My point to you was, yes, so they're kind of operated, integrated with one another. However, at some point in time, if this property were ever spun off, it would not be a used car lot. We're not looking for permission to be a used car lot and take on other people's used cars.
So then it would be, okay, are there plans to spin this off at all?
No.
Okay,
Go back to the lighting. Thank you very much I did take a look on the street, and you said the one that's across the street, I think that's the one that location had been renovated in the last few years.
Yes.
That lighting seems pretty subdued. It definitely, it's not harsh, definitely points down. I don't see a lot of light emitting past the lot itself. It's a very different situation on the one across the street, the one that says Premier Used Cars that I think are under the same ownership. So it's not going to be that kind of lighting. Those seem to be pointed up and out a little bit and seem to emit a lot more harsh, bright light that goes beyond the lot.
So they will not be like that. That lot has been a dealership and has not been kind of redone in quite some time. So I think it's been operating as a car dealership since the 70s, at least based on aerial photos, much prior to my client's time there. This will be a brand new building and brand new fixtures on it. So yes, everything will be LED, shielded, downward facing, operated on photocells instead of switches, etc. So yes, the intent is to match kind of the design intent across the street.
And I'm sorry,
I have a quick,
on the lot that you have, that we're reviewing, is there space to unload new cars there? What is the plan for unloading new cars that will be sold on the lot?
All access will be coming off of Boston Post Road. The answer is
A lot for the trailer or whatever that brings the new cars.
any trailers will be coming in, to the extent they were coming in, it'd be coming in off of Boston Post Road. I think just given at least while the three sites are in common ownership, in reality, the unloading would probably occur on the main facility, and then the cars would be shuffled from there, just so as to not be parked in the middle of Boston Post Road and or trying to maneuver around in the site. But yes, the idea would be if there were to be direct unloads on the site, the trucks would access off of Boston Post Road and then exit out the same way.
Okay, so I guess I'm just trying, is there a plan to be unloading while it's parked on the Boston Post Road?
No.
But you do not have a designated.
And we can commit to we have there's no plan to unloading on Sunnyside either. If there needed to be a condition of an approval, that would be acceptable.
I have a quick question for Charlie. Does this need site plan approval or for Dennis?
We have an application pending before the planning board currently. Before we made the application to your board, they referred us to your, they adopted the neg deck and then referred us out to your board. And we have to go back to them to complete the site plan approval process.
Okay, so that's where the lights that we mentioned would be specified. It's as well.
Yes.
As there. Okay.
And then they're reviewing our stormwater plan and landscape plan as well.
Okay, so the stormwater plan that you have there, that's something that the planning board is the one that, who takes care of that? Who's the one that oversees that?
So
Charlie? I don't know if you know her, Dennis.
I think whoever the host is, Charles had mentioned that he needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, Charles. Oh, you can't do it yourself, Charles? You can do it like this if you want.
I'm sorry, David, I missed you. Maybe I can answer your question. I missed what the question was.
The question was if Charles can unmute himself.
That part I can't help with.
Brittany, can you help?
Brittany, can you help with that?
Okay,
Yeah, I got it. Okay, there you
thank you, Brittany.
You're
What
welcome.
was the question, Dave? I'm sorry, I was trying to. unmute
Oh, no,
myself.
no. Let's start all over again now.
The site plan approval?
The site plan, no, the stormwater,
Stormwater.
the stormwater pollution prevention plan. Is that something that the planning board looks into with site plan?
Yep, the planning board will look into it as well as the village's stormwater management officer under a separate section of the code.
Okay, so not us. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Um,
So just a quick question to the applicant. So you don't have a designated loading space on the property?
No, we do not. You're saying as far as for car unloading?
Well, I'm saying just in terms of, you know, the spaces which are on the lot, you've now designated 3 spaces for customers, but you don't have a designated space for
Right.
Loading or unloading.
We do not. It's not a regular retail business where we're going to have deliveries coming and going with trucks kind of pulling in and dropping goods like that. You know, to the extent that we needed to mark out a loading space, it would probably overlap with the one of the parking banks. So in reality, what would wind up happening is if we needed to make space, cars would be moved around on the lot to create space.
Right. Well, I just think that that's something that we have to keep in mind when we're doing some kind of you know, a variance for this. It also, you know, you seem to use for parking, as you said, retail or service business standards. I'm not sure why you didn't use the standards for motor vehicle sales agency, which are, it seems to me like you have to have at least 10 customer spaces. Not that I think that that's necessary, but that might be something else that we're going to have to mention in our resolution. Because
Rex Gedney, the project architect, I think is muted and blacked out. He put together the parking calculation. That may have just been an oversight in looking at this facility as a retail facility as opposed to just not realizing there was a parking calculation for motor vehicle sales.
there is, it's one for each. Well, it basically says because you've got a smaller building, a 780 square foot building. I think it says no fewer than 10 spaces, which again is something that based upon the size might be something that we would have to put into a resolution.
Brian, do you have the section? Is that in the code section?
Yeah, it's in 342-56. And if you just go under use, there's motor vehicle sales agency.
Because they have not, I don't believe they have asked for a variance. That's my recollection.
No, because they're using retail and services businesses,
Right.
which I don't think that's not the appropriate definition for this. So we're going to have to, then they should be asking for a variance for that. If in fact, I'm reading it correctly in terms of no fewer than 10 spaces.
Okay, 7. Does the applicant want to address that? Let me just, that's 342, 342-56, you said?
Yeah, 342-56 under, A,
Schedule of off-street
schedule of off-street parking. If you go into the second page, right under funeral home, you'll see motor vehicle sales agency.
So instead of audibling and changing our application on the fly, what I would put forward to the board is to the extent I need a variance for that, we would come back. I'd have to renotice and have a separate hearing on that anyways. I can speak to the project architect in the event the board was so inclined to give us our special permit approval. Between us now and going back to the planning board to complete our site plan approval, I could speak to the project architect and the applicant and perhaps rework our parking to provide 10 customer parking spaces, and then we'd have a compliant plan.
Except, yeah, I don't think we can,
I have to say that,
I don't think we can act on the special permit that's non-compliant. I think you'd need to have that as a predicate to it, or, so you'd come back with both.
I'm sorry, but the code doesn't specify that this is for, it probably intended to be for customers or staff, but it just says how many spaces it needs. It doesn't say, it just says it's a motor vehicle agency and it needs a certain number of spaces, and it definitely has that many spaces. It didn't say for.
It says off-street parking. It
Yeah.
says- And off-street parking, because that's another point, Meg, I think you're saying off, this code under A, 34256A, 34256A says schedule of off-street parking requirements. So that wouldn't be storage. And I think much of the ones, and maybe the applicant can just clarify this for me, but you have the proposed, you have these parking surfaces that are like 25 spots on the one side, and then you have 10 on the others. I assume those are not for parking, since you'd need a helicopter to bring them up and down, I suppose.
They're labeled, yes, they're labeled as spaces, just as vehicle spaces, but practically speaking, there'll be stalls for vehicle storage.
Right. So I think you really do need to address, I don't know, Meg, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you have to address the issue of 34256, or how you came up with that. Is Rex getting, he's on, I see. Maybe you could explain that, or?
So you're saying that the spaces, because there's not an aisle around them, you're not considering them regular off-street parking spaces? Is that it, David? Because there is.
I'm saying off-street parking, they're not, there's no way, if you have for example, let's look at the 25 spaces on the right side. I'm not sure, I guess that's north, so that would be the east side. You certainly can't use 25 parking spaces, because not unless you were to engage in a restaurant nearby so people could wait and eat while they were waiting for their car, you couldn't get in or out, because you have to be able to access the parking spaces. These are not accessible. I mean, I think the applicant's correct. These are these are like stalls for cars.
Chair, if I may, board, this is Dennis, the Assistant Building Inspector. So are you treating this application, just for me to catch up, as an independent or a satellite of the existing business? Because then it would be based on the existing business and not the satellite, if I understand it correctly. So if they're counting that office there as an office that is linked to their main business, would they need additional parking?
Well, then you'd have to submit a plan that would show both, but the applicant a few moments ago made a comment that right now they're under common ownership, but this could be a standalone spinoff. And I think Napier was clear on that, and I think that makes sense. Otherwise, you'd have to submit an overall plan for both to show you had additional, and then we would just deal with the street and the crossing the street. But I think I'm not sure that's a problem. You would be merging the properties then.
Yeah, if the special permit is based on the owner, then when the property is sold, changes hands, then they would have to reapply for a special permit, and the board can reflect that at that time, if I understand correctly. So
Well,
at that point, if
I don't know.
parcel B is separated, then they would have to revisit that if it's sold.
Well, I think I'm not sure. I think that becomes more of a legal issue about the variance, if there's a variance of some type of what it runs with the land. But then you're going to have a position where someone's going to say, listen, I got permission to do this, and now I'm just dividing it. And you're going to be very hard pressed at that time from an equitable standpoint to deal with that and grapple. But I think the applicant here has submitted a plan and a proposal, unless I'm missing this, that deals with only the one side of the street.
So I may have an easy fix, which is we have 3 spots labeled for customer parking now. The first bank of the proposed parking in the largest section there is 7 spaces.
Yeah.
I could have the architect label those as customer parking, and we'd have our 10 spaces. Alternatively, 352-54 allows the board to essentially permit parking on other properties within 500 feet that are under common ownership and control. I don't even know that I want to go there. If I could, if the board was okay with me just labeling the 10 spaces here, that's an easy solution for us.
Well, just to be clear, labeling them will accomplish, otherwise it's a graphic situation. You're just labeling them. The issue is that's how they would have to be used.
Understood. And that's how they
I
would,
mean,
that's how they,
it would
that's how
be
they'd
the-
be designated on the site. Yes.
So, I mean, I think, listen, if you want to use the other side, as you mentioned, within the 5, then you have to really open up the door to both sides and take a look at it and merge it.
And that may be what happens in the future. And we're coming back with a master plan that looks at all 3 sites in kind of a holistic sense, but that's not what we're attempting to do right now.
So you want to redo the plan so that you have, what is the number you'd need? I'm sorry, I didn't remember that.
10.
It would be 10.
Okay, so, all right, and then I think what you should do on the plan then is indicate which one's a customer and which ones are for vehicles. Storage, vehicles, display, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not storage, it's display.
And I guess so maybe I can share my screen again.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm trying to do in the interest of trying to proceed tonight is these 3 spots are currently labeled as customer parking. There's 7 spaces right here that I would have no problem with taking condition that those be relabeled on our plans as we go back to the planning board as customer parking and be designated as such and conditioned in any approval as such. And that would give me my 10. There's 7 here and 3 here.
How are you going to move the other cars around? Just for the moment, just go next to that. Then that would leave you with, if you had those 7, that would leave you with what, 18 spots there, right? Storage.
Yes, I
if
think it would
somebody
be very
comes in and they
unlikely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it would be very unlikely that I'm going to have all these spaces occupied at the same time and need to be pulling cars out of the back of here.
Well, I think if a customer came and said, that's the color, that's the car I want, and it's in the back there.
Yes, then you're going to be jockeying cars, just like on a number of car dealership lots do now.
This is pretty extensive for in front. Yeah, are there any other, well, I don't know.
Chair, if I may, I have one other question. If we're treating this as a separate entity from the existing business,
Right.
they will also require parking for employees.
All right.
And not just for sales purposes and purchasers, but also the employees based on the square footage of that office area.
I don't think you can say that it's the use that we're using is both vehicle sales agency and a retail business combined. I think if we're going to use the 10 spaces or motor vehicle sales agency, you can't add that includes the retail aspect of it. I don't think you can add another use and go to another set of minimum requirements. I think the code is fairly silent on what these spaces are intended for. I actually don't think that it specifically calls out that it's for customers, but I definitely I would think that it's including everything that's needed for that business, that it's considering employees in there. I don't think that you would say you need 10 for the customers and then you need something else for a retail business, which is actually supposed to be for customers as well.
Is there a separate requirement for employees on this side? I mean, on the motor vehicle? Under the schedule?
No, like Meg says,
Yeah.
it's just, 10 spaces. It doesn't designate what for.
Yeah, but if you look at.
Besides,
No, it does on some of the others though, which is,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So since it's silent, I agree that,
yeah, I think she's right, yeah. There's no requirement. The other categories, Brian, refer to employees.
Yes, the other categories do.
Right, whereas
This one
does not.
This one does not.
Right.
So that's why I agree with Meg on this, because I think it's really excessive to ask for more.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just want to address it, but okay. Okay. Now, are there going to be, is there a curb in front of the 25 spots?
Between the rest of the lot, no. On the backside of Sunnyside, yes, there's a curb cut in there as well. I can bring the plan back up.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, no, I have that. I have the plan. What about on the post road side, on the,
There's a retaining wall
Yeah,
here,
there's-
so
there's
the
the
lot
wall.
is elevated, and I can just flip. There's going to be some significant plant material based on the village's planning landscape consultant. So they had comments about adding in some street trees, so we have those proposed along the street here. There will be a curb installed between what essentially is the upland of the other lot lower down here. And then there would be new curbing and new plant material planted along the back edge. This is all entirely flat right now. Kind of the existing rubble asphalt extends out into this residential lot. So we're cutting off ourselves from that residential lot.
Right, where you have the pointer now, that's gonna be like a 2-foot grassy swale, I think you said?
Yes.
Okay.
but the problem I see then is if you're going to make those 7 spots for parking, okay, customer parking, how are you going to get the other cars in or out and move them about?
Well, so there would have to be some carjacking. I think I could be wrong, and I'm sure the applicant hopes I'm wrong, but I would think it would be very unlikely that all 10 of these spaces, given the small size of the lot and small size of the building, I don't think it's going to be all that often where all 10 of these spaces would be occupied. But that would be no different than even if there was no customers parked here, I didn't need to have these 10 spaces and every single one of these spots was full of a car now, and
Right.
they needed to get this car out from this spot, they're going to have to move the cars around it. And
Well, unless you could put those 7 spots behind another location, like behind the 2 that you have and coming in this way, because what I'm saying is you're having a problem. You're going to have your your storage area there with basically it's going to be the only way it can get in or out would be using what the Sunnyside Avenue cut. that you
so the
want.
sunny side is not meant to be an active curb cut. There's an existing curb cut there now. That's going to be gated and closed off, and it's actually going to be planted over here. It's being left there simply because we're the tenant on the property. We're not the owner. And so to the extent that the owner at some point in time wants to do anything with the adjacent lot and they already have an existing curb cut there, we just didn't want to touch it. But the intent is to have that as a emergency access only for whatever reason.
Well, is there a reason you can't go behind the building or a little right where you are now, where you think is there? You have those 2 and do the other ones, do the 7 vertically coming or horizontally coming in there. And that lets you. No, go back to the 2 that you've now
You're
said.
saying stack them up here?
No, to the right. There you go. Stop right there. So if you went there and you went right there, but you had them driving in there, you had 6 or 7 there. Wouldn't that accomplish it? And you'd be able to take them away from the other side, so you'd have less storage on the other, which would make jockeying much easier. So in other words, you're just taking the 7, if you would, and you're moving. Maybe you're not taking those 7, but you're moving those to the other.
On top here?
Yes, right. Yes.
So I was just trying I figured this is easy for regular motorists because it's straight in, straight out, as opposed to having to get into tandem spaces and parking in front of or behind someone.
But you're going to pull into that and someone's going to drive in there and they go, oh, no, don't drive there because somebody wants to see a car in there. So instead of having, you have 3 deep cars behind the parking. And the only way out, particularly if you're not using Sunnyside, is you have to have those cars moved or not allow them to park there. So what if you took those 7 that you have there? If you could remove those 7 that you talked about earlier, you would now only have 3 deep for your stalls, which would make moving those cars in or out much easier. Wouldn't get involved with customers and people walking around while you're trying to jockey them. Because I can assure you that if somebody wants to buy a car in the middle or by Sunnyside, they're going to jockey it out and people aren't going to park there because they're going to say, no, this doesn't work. So if you could move those 7 and move them elsewhere, like to the other side, like if you now take that's it, keep moving it. Well, no, I would go, right about even to the little more to your, I don't know, was it south? I guess a little south. Yeah, and then you put them in a row, maybe coming in there, exactly. So that you'd turn into them. That would then open up. See, you would have the same thing. You would take that 1 row
So I don't want to speak for Rex, but I think there's a 24-foot, or Rex or Dennis may know, but I think this dimension here is 24 feet. I think that is a minimum dimension for a travel aisle in the parking lot. And so
Okay.
if I take them out here, I probably only get another spot. I'm taking away 7 and only picking up 1 or 2 here. And then maybe.
No, I'm talking about it going up. Maybe I'm not. You see where you have that line? It's the proposed rear. Yeah, if you move your cursor up, I can't control it. Okay, right there.
Okay.
So if you were to take and have the cars parked horizontally at some place, you have all of this area behind the building, right?
Yes,
If you
but there's
could
another
move-
10 spaces back here already.
right, well, there's a 10 storage spaces, the stall.
Yes,
So I'm saying if you could somehow, if you could move your 7 over, you would alleviate the number of cars that would be piled up next to each other on the right side,
you're
right?
saying take some of these and make them storage
Yeah.
spaces in this area over here instead.
Or coming down above the 2 customer ones. I mean, I'm not looking to be difficult, but it's,
So again, I think that's, I don't know if you can see it, but that's a 26-foot dimension here. So I don't know if I added another one, Rex may not have put another one there because I may get less than 24 from these spaces for backup width.
it just seems to me you've got yourself 27 spaces. You're gonna have 25 spots there. Even if you dedicate 7 to customers, there's no other way for them to get out for those other cars that are there, the remaining 18.
Yes, it's going to require.
So no one's gonna pull into the parking lot, park there, and someone's gonna say, "Oh, excuse me, we're trying to get cars in or out." I mean, I don't see those as really viable parking spots because the only way to get out, it's not like Sunnyside is available to you, and the front and East Boston Post Road is not. So the only way is to use the area that's now dedicated for customers parking, which I think is not a realistic plan. Whereas if you had done them behind where you are now, where your cursor is, and find, I mean, you should be able to find the room in there for 7 spots, and it would make it easier to jockey the others. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose we could rework this area to find 7 spaces here. It would just, you'd lose, it'd be trading 10 for 7 or something like that. But I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I guess that's something that we'll have to, if the board isn't inclined to allow us to move forward with my concept, is something we'll have to take a look at and revisit with you. And unless I don't know if the board were inclined to condition the approval on having 10 spaces, and we can finalize that with the planning board, and I'll rework that between now and January.
Well, right now you don't have a plan that shows the 10 spaces that are dedicated spaces, correct? That being the case, I think you have to do that or apply for a variance. I mean, we have a plan that doesn't conform, right?
I suppose that depends on if you say the code says I need 10 dedicated spaces or just 10 spaces in general. But yes, I don't have a plan that shows 10
Dave, do you want to
dedicated.
see how other board members feel?
Yeah, I do, please. That's
I
what
feel like that might have been the intent, but the code didn't say customer spacing. It didn't say employee spacing, customer spacing. It just said 10 spaces. So we're trying to interpret that it meant customer and that there would be more spaces for cars. But I don't see that there. I think we're reading something into it. I don't know how other board members feel, but I just.
Yeah. How do others, I mean, I'm just reading it. It says off-street parking. It doesn't say storage for vehicles.
But I'm sorry, as Leo was showing that there is available 10 spaces that you can just pull into. So if you're not feeling that the other spaces qualify as off-street parking because they're stacked up, there are 10 spaces that are. It's whether or not we feel like you need extra, you don't think that the maneuverability is correct in the lot, we have to explain, but I think we should maybe poll other members how they feel about it.
So listen, I brought this issue up because I do interpret the code that they do need 10 off-street parking spaces. And I do believe that is not the same as storage as the vehicles that they have on the property. When I look at the plan, I completely understand what David is trying to say. However, I'm also looking at the plan and saying, listen, there used to be 25 spaces in that same area, which would definitely and absolutely make it even less maneuverable than having 7 spaces in front that may or may not be filled by customers, because I'm not sure you're going to have all 10 customer spaces used at the same time. So I do see if the applicant wants to designate those 7 spaces towards off-street parking, I actually think it makes this plan more maneuverable than drawn. Because like I said, you're not guaranteed now to have that filled. You were definitely guaranteed to have it filled before. So I wouldn't have an objection if that's what the applicant wanted to do. But that being said, I think David's advice is also prudent in the fact that they could redraw it or they could ask for a variance, because I don't think, in my opinion, this lot actually has to have all the spaces. If they applied for a variance, I think that might be something that we'd be inclined to grant, given given the size of this property. But if they don't want to come back for a variance, I would be okay with those spots being converted to customer spots and calling it a day.
Or Brian, could we do it another way? What if we felt that you have the 10 spots they need, and you let planning on their site plan deal with where they should be?
Well, that's.
We say it's required, and if we granted a special permit, subject to them having 10 spaces instead for segregated spaces for customers.
That's perfectly fine by me. I'm just going with the code, and the code says that for motor vehicle sales, they should have 10 off-street parking spaces.
Yeah. You do have that street becomes very busy with people trying to park to go in, because the other lot across the street is used for vehicles.
If I could just weigh in for a second, Brian and David, I would actually prefer a condition that I have 10 spaces that planning designate, as opposed to I do something to satisfy your board and then I get to planning and they say that's not, I don't know if they would, and this isn't disparaging, but they say that's awful, we don't like that. And now I'm getting ping pong back and forth between your two boards as to different thoughts on what the parking layout should be.
Well, you won't get ping pong, because if we grant the permit with that requirement, that is what you have, and planning has to work with what it is, and that we define it. But I think the idea is to say you need 10 dedicated customer space, accessible customer spaces that are available, and I guess they could be anywhere effectively. If planning's going to do a site plan on this.
Chair, one further, this is Assistant Building Inspector Dennis Strogan. We still need the off-street parking for the employees that will be working in that structure. So if it's listed as office.
Where do you see that? Where is that from?
I don't see any spaces for employees.
Or where do you see the requirement from?
That's for the 10.
That's
That's included in the 10.
There's no separate. Yeah.
Not 10 customer parking spaces, but 10 parking spaces that can be used by customers or employees.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't see a requirement for separate ones, right?
All right, so it requires 10 parking spaces for employees or customers.
It requires 10 parking spaces. Well, I see what you're saying. How would you requires 10 designated customer spaces?
No. It says 10 off-street parking spaces.
Right.
It's not. It doesn't designate between who would use them. That should service the entire site.
And so what I could do just to move this forward is if the board is leaning towards find the 10 designated parking spaces, and that's going to be a condition of approval, and I work that out with planning. When this plan gets redone, we can label the 10 spaces as parking space versus storage space or something along those lines to distinguish between the two and try to draw clarity to it.
Yeah, I think we're just saying that it should be 10 spaces that are accessible when you drive into the lot.
And that would be accessible for customers or employees of this site, not of another site across the street.
Understood.
Yeah, and I think if we're gonna do it, I mean, I'm not crazy about the design on this thing because I think it doesn't work, but as long as they have to do 10, as long as they have to be accessible and separate and dedicated, then I suppose that could be part of the site plan. I don't know.
And you said you would be amenable to a condition that you wouldn't offload on Sunnyside. Would you be amenable that you cannot offload on the Boston Post Road? Or at least not on certain hours on the Boston Post Road? Because I know sometimes across the street that there is a train there and it actually forces, it pretty much turns a two-lane road into one lane because it goes into one of the lanes. And that is dangerous and just makes traffic congestion if you're doing it during a busy time.
So I was going to say, I don't know that I can commit to just across the board, but certainly to Sunnyside, yes. And on Boston Post Road, I'd be fine to not during peak hours, so not between 7 to 9 or whatever.
Or like when school lets out because you're near a school and there's a lot of kids and driving and.
Yes.
I also.
Charlie, what do you?
I was just gonna ask, what is the square footage of the building, the gross floor area of the building? I was just trying to look it up on the plans.
780.
Okay.
I also wanted to clarify, if you have a used car that you've obtained through a trade-in, will those used cars be exclusively stored within these premises and not across the street, and vice versa, that used cars obtained from a trade-in across the street will not be stored at these premises?
I don't know, Greta, how they intend to handle inventory, so I wouldn't want to say 100% that no used car from here will ever wind up across the street or vice versa. I think in practice, as long as they're all under common ownership, there probably will be some shuffling around, I would think. But I don't know that they've necessarily thought that far out themselves either.
Charlie, question for you. In a way, this is almost, given the common ownership and the common operation, it's almost like, shouldn't this be one special permit for the whole thing?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I was kind of thinking that as well. I don't know if the existing Toyota has a special permit. And then it would just.
I believe it does. I believe Brittany, you found the special permit for across the street.
Because it's really raises more and more as we discuss this, it's creating an artificial separation that operates together.
Sure, you could treat it as an amendment
And to the special permit, right?
to the special permit. Or you could treat it individually as its own entity and issue a special permit and recognize that they're tied in ownership. Either way, I think you're covered. It's just at the board's pleasure.
Well, here's my concern, Charlie, and maybe I'm probably wrong, but if we're trying to comply with the special permit requirements and the parking requirements, and they're using each other's, and they're going back and forth as they will, and obviously, we're really creating, I don't know, there's just not one cohesive plan. I just find it to be, we're going to end up with.
Yeah, well, the code actually says that it's supposed to be on the premises. So it says that you can only sell used cars that were turned in to buy a new car on the premises.
Right.
So it does make it.
Right.
You're
So
not
it
supposed
makes
to-
it difficult. And then if they start to use it and they start to bring over more, then it's a little bit, it's disorganized in the sense that it's all of the features that are designed to operate are being now two separate operations, but they're not separate.
I think it would probably, in going off of what Leo had just mentioned, it might be beneficial to the applicant to treat it as an amended special permit, because then you have the ability to take used cars that have been traded in at the original facility and bring them to this facility and so forth, without having question of whether or not you're permitted to do it.
You could also find more customer employee parking spaces between the two, have 5 over here and enough over there.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it really, if you're gonna run this together, it ought to be an amended permit and ought to be for one package. And I think it would probably benefit the applicant, but it would certainly, because otherwise, Meg, as you pointed out, you can only sell the vehicles that are traded in over there, right?
That's what the code says. I
Yeah.
don't know that there is anybody ever tracking. You see new cars and you see used cars. And I don't know that there's ever any tracking or reporting to be sure that that used car was turned in for that new car. And there wasn't some switch between dealerships or something.
Well, that's not our job to.
It's not our job. I'm just saying in practicality. I think the idea is that you don't have a standalone used car, that it's supposed to be only used cars that have been turned in to buy a new car. It's not going to turn into a dedicated used car.
So I think the issue is if the board wants to consider this as a full item so that they have the freedom and you look at the thing as one amended permit. Otherwise, you're creating separate entities that have a relationship and that are going to be doing this. I mean, candidly, I know what happens now. You go to look on one side of the street and you walk across, because one of my concerns is crossing the road. Because you've ever driven by there during the day, people going across the street to look at some of the cars. I think if somebody goes to buy a car over here on this side, wouldn't it be, is it fair to say that they may end up doing the paperwork across the street?
No,
No.
no, we were
Completely
told, we were told the last time that this came up, and that's why there's a building on the site. And that's why that building had to be able to conduct business independently, where you've got a little office, you've got bathroom facilities, you know.
Right.
We were really told that this site was going to be set up completely independent to operate on its own. I don't know what the applicant's intentions are, but you know, in terms of an asset, there may be an interest in having this as its own separate, instead of joining it on a permit. That way they could sell it. Otherwise, this is just an accessory plot.
Correct. Is this operated by the same people that own across the street or operate
Yeah.
across? The street?
Yes.
Currently.
It'll become
And-
part of Toyota City. So there is a standalone office. There will be the capability to process sales within here, you know, to the extent that somebody sees a car on this lot and this sales guy is busy and they get sent across the street to finish the paperwork. You know, I suppose that's possible, but the idea is that this is intended to be capable of functioning on its own.
All right. So I think if you want it to function on your own, you've got to come back with a plan that shows the parking, as we've discussed. And
And I,
how does the
we're
board
talking
feel?
about it, I'm sorry, I know that the other lot, but we're talking about combination, is the special permit that I was able to find for the existing business, was that ever renewed? Do you know what is the status of that special permit? I think.
I did not handle those approvals. I believe those were handled by either Mr. Spatz or Mr. Noto.
So it's just like, if we're going to start combining it, I think we should take a look. I think that they might have not been renewed after the 3 years. I could be wrong. I'm not sure of what are in the records.
Well, if they were renewed, they would have been more permanent. They not necessarily have to come back every 3 years.
I understand, but I don't think that they were ever renewed. So that's just something else.
That's a problem. So you got to identify the issue of the special permit. What does the board think about if the applicant wants to?
I only saw an older special permit and was not able to find a newer one, but I'm not speculating that it wasn't, that someone didn't renew it. It's just, I don't have that. Couldn't get that from the village.
Was the board comfortable with proceeding with this as a separate thing entirely, in which case,
If it proceeds as a
I don't know.
separate, then it has to comply as a separate.
yeah, that has to comply. But it's actually, and I think they're being forthright, and I think the applicant's being very straight about, but they do interrelate. I mean, the applicant's going to be taking in cars across the street and putting them out here in the lot, I think, to sell as used, I would think.
I think we would have to ask the applicant is like if you were not going to operate with that business model, but you were going to restrict yourself to buying and selling operations just on this lot and not crossing over, not bringing automobiles from the other side.
So if they do bring them over, so we can give the applicant some guidance here, if they do bring them over and they do go back and forth, is it our position then that it would have to be an amended one permit versus if they do not and they kept it separate operationally, then they could do it separate?
Yes.
I guess they got to pick a way. Can't be both, right?
So I don't necessarily have an issue with them being considered together, other than obviously it costs me a month, or not me, but the applicant a month. I guess the only question is, am I opening up? I'm not aware as to, I don't want to start talking about operations on the other properties and driveway layouts and parking layouts, et cetera, that have already been, in theory at least, permitted and approved and in operation for some time. So I just don't want to open up a whole can of worms that then sends me down a rabbit hole.
I don't think you need a site plan review for it would be, this is an extension of the business and you need a site plan for the new
Just
construction.
for the extension. Yeah. The problem you might be opening up, candidly, is that the other side, and I've been to the other side a few times, seems to have taken the parking area and using it now for storage of vehicles. Because I've been there on occasion, I've taken my kids there and in the past, and I always had to park somewhere down the street on the Boston Post Road. But I noticed that the parking lot, now, I don't know, but you may want to think about this. Obviously, if it all complies, it would be very easy to amend it. It would give you more flexibility for operations. I have a problem, I think, conceptually with the idea of treating it separately, which is, I have no problem with that, but treating it separately, but it's not separate. And I think it's fair to say it's probably not going to operate separately because of the interplay between them. I don't know what other members of the board feel. And then
Well, what would happen, if they went out and they actually found out that special permit on the other side of the street has now expired? Would they have to go through the whole process again?
I suppose so.
You asked if we would allow them to, even though it expired. I think Charlie, right? If it expired, it would be up to say that they could.
Yeah,
it would only expire if it was for a set period of time and not renewed. I believe it was renewed.
Okay.
I mean, but I don't have it here and I don't know. Does the building department know?
I see a special permit for 2015 for 3 years, and so it would have been sometime in
2018. Wow.
We could
I
look it
guess
up and find
one
if
of the things
there's
we
one.
can do is we can let the applicant take a look at it and make a decision and come back either focusing on this one standalone or come back and amend to include this as an amended portion of the special permit and then clean up the other one. How do members feel about that?
I think that makes sense. I agree.
I mean, otherwise we're just, I think, just sort of throwing it against the wall. I mean, I don't know.
Otherwise, we're sort of disregarding what the code actually says. I'm sorry, Dennis.
Somebody's rubbing a mic someplace. I'm sorry.
Otherwise, we're disregarding the code. We know that they're not going to.
I think so. We know they're not.
comply with
We
the
know
code.
there's
We're
going to be an
saying
interplay.
it doesn't seem like such a big deal. Do we really want to do that or not?
Chair, board, that's the question I was asking earlier, that, looking at this application, I don't see if it's together, apart, a satellite, if they are purchasing the used vehicles on one side of the street, selling it to this other business that belongs to them as well. Are both of these agencies sharing the same name is another question that I have. So is it Toyota City as well, or is it Toyota City A and B? Is there a difference in the name of the business? there's a lot of questions that I have. So if they'd like to contact me tomorrow, it'll help me out for the future, as well as
Well,
that.
I assume that they're the same name, they're the same operator, correct?
Yes.
Right, yeah, I assume, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I don't think anyone's criticizing that. But I think it's sort of like we're creating a second thing when the first one may not even be. To me, it's just strange. Brian, what do you think on this? Anything? I mean, I just think
I think that if you're creating, well, you said it's by the same ownership, but I think it is worth to see whether or not it's separate companies. You could have one ownership owning two different companies, having two different.
Well, the permit for 2015 for across the street was to DCH Holdings LLC. What's the name?
DCH was the prior operator, and so DCH has sold and assigned their business to Integrity Automotive, which kept the Toyota City name. So it's an entirely new outfit that has all three parcels under
Right.
lease.
And actually,
Meg, you just hit it. You just hit it on the head. Take a look at the rest of that permit. It probably says that it has to be renewed and changed when there's a new owner, right?
it said a transfer of ownership, it actually did say. And it also said that it needed to be renewed in 3 years, so there should be something else.
Right. So I think we have an issue.
Yeah,
right there.
I think you got to kind of come back. You've got to get your ducks in line here. I think you don't have, it sounds to me, and also that you probably, it tends to appear that you don't have a special permit that's current and in place for the across the street. And I think that I don't think anyone's saying we're adverse to the idea that it be a separate standalone, but if it's going to be a separate standalone, it has to be a separate standalone, not one of these wink winks. And then you're doing it because the code's very careful about that. We can't modify that. The code requires that they trade-ins to be at the same place, et cetera. So I think you have the most flexibility that the applicant would have would arise out of having one cohesive special permit.
Understood. I guess if we were going to do that, I guess just while I have the board's ear, for that plan, I could just come back as far as the other parcel goes, come back with an existing as-built survey. I don't need a full-blown proposed site plan, landscape plan, drainage plan, et cetera.
I don't think so. I think it's an existing place that had a special permit. Possibly it lapsed, but the point is,
I understand we may need to request a renewal and an extension.
A renewal and an amendment, yes. Which I think you've already done that work.
Right. And I mean, I would want to see a layout because, of course, we do want to make sure it meets the minimum requirements in the code for off-street parking and such. So we would need some kind of a layout for the site. Let me ask you another question. You keep mentioning the fact that Integrity bought out, did you say?
DCH Holdings.
DCH. Now, yes, they bought out DCH. Is that all 3 plots? Did you say 3 plots?
Yeah.
I believe there's actually 5 altogether. They're all under the same. I don't know if the one across Sunnyside is owned by the same family, but
well, that was going to be my question.
Yes, there's 3 lots. So there's the subject property now. There's the residential lot behind it. Then there's the lot the brook bisects. Then there's also the lot that the Toyota City dealership is on, and there's the lot across the street on Sunnyside.
Which is
3 lots that have the business operating on. 3
Correct.
Lots.
And there's 2. Well, there's 2 lots that are currently active, and we're proposing the 3rd. Then there's 2 other.
Right, yeah, one is proposed.
So are there currently 2 special permits?
Yeah. Brittany could not find anything for the one across the street.
I believe the one on Sunnyside predates any.
Yeah, 1324 did not have anything. It was only under 1305. But we would have to do a little more research, but that was all we pulled up.
What's the full name of Integrity, by the way? Integrity what?
Integrity Automotive LLC.
And also the one across the street has a big sign that it says used cars. Do you sell any, or does the company sell any new cars on that dealership?
I believe there's signs for new cars this way, used cars this way.
Okay.
but I haven't had detailed discussions on the out. My focus is really limited just to this parcel. So as far as how these other properties operate and what their approvals are or not, I don't have any information on that presently.
So there's an Integrity, is this Integrity Automotive Group?
Yes.
All right, so they're out of Melville. All right. Yeah. So Integrity Automotive Group was formed in 2020 in New York.
And so if you do come back, as Brian was saying, we'd like to see a site plan, because if we're renewing a special permit, we would need to see if anything changed. We'd have to compare it to,
That would be an
your
as-built.
operations increased, have you reduced the parking spaces, to see if there's something different than if it's a simple renewal.
Understood. When I said as-built, I meant
I know what you meant.
as-built survey that shows all the site plans.
It's not something for a site plan review, yeah.
Yes.
Right. It's more of a survey of the status, an as-built status survey. Yeah. I think you should do that, and then you could do your computations and calculations on. It certainly gives you more flexibility, and I think from what I'm sensing from the board is that there's a little difficulty with the idea of doing it separate when it's not separate, because you're going to run into more problems right off the bat.
Understood.
I'll also say if that third plot is now, they're all going to be under common ownership. If in fact that lot is going to be buying and selling and cars are going to go back and forth in between this lot and the Toyota City lot, unless they only sell a different type of vehicle, that ought to be looked at by the applicant as well.
Where is the other lot?
There's one across the street from the main Toyota City that you're thinking of. If you're driving towards Rye, the main
Right.
one on the right, and then there's another lot directly across the street.
So this is the main lot here this is the main lot. This is the other lot across Sunnyside
Oh, I'm
here.
sorry. Oh, 1 second again. I'm sorry. Do that again. I wasn't
This is the main lot here. So this is the Toyota dealership here.
right.
This is the lot across the street currently. This is an old aerial.
Yeah. That's when you had storage on that lot.
This is from 2009.
Now that 2009, does that have any special permit or any permit on it?
It did not, but it was used this way for quite some time, I think, until what wound up happening, the history on the site is
Chinese restaurant.
and when it burned, they started to use it for vehicle storage. It was all owned by the same families. And what happened is when they came in to do the main showroom renovation in 2015, at that point in time, it was picked up that there was no permits or approvals to use these properties here. And so then there was like temporary approvals that were granted while they pursued the prior applicants. Was not my clients. Pursued a use variance to continue to use these properties. As you can see, they had cars stored on the residential portion of the property. They were pursuing a use variance to keep the vehicle storage going. At that time, there was a proposal to use this as an office, which was across the brook, but then also use this lower lot. Our application is limited just to this, the commercially zoned lot here.
Well, okay, but to my
But you can
knowledge,
see
was
that
it-
the one across Sunnyside has been used as a car dealership going back into 1976 or something.
Oh, wow.
but the issue is going back to that third lot that's for storage, as you pointed out there, the one across the street on the west side of the street, that's the one you have marked around.
Yes.
Does that have any special permit on it?
I haven't looked. I mean, it has its own building there.
No, I mean the one next to it. If you continue south a little bit, the next lot.
You're saying like these separate tax lots? I don't know if these are,
Okay. Now, you just had one a second ago on the corner. Is that it? Where you had the storage? You have that.
this
thing
is
on-
the property we're looking at right now. This one here.
Yes.
So this is back in 2009. It was being used for vehicle storage at that time.
I realize that, and there was an issue with that, but I'm saying, did it ever get legalized or a permit issued there?
No, that's why we're here before you now. It was used this way for years up until they came in to ask for the showroom permits, and at that point in time, it was realized, I think
It's now empty, Dave. It's not this way anymore. There's no cars on it. It's
yes, this is it today.
Okay.
or in 2018, but also today.
And Dave, my question was regarding the lot, which currently does have a building and cars on it, which is acting as a, car sales agency. Just, I don't know what direction that is, but it's on the same side of the street. It's where the pointer is now.
Yep.
Yep.
And does that have a special permit?
Brittany, you couldn't find that one, right?
All right, so my suggestion is, I don't know what the board feels, let's all talk about it for a second. They ought to get I think this is, you got a compliance and a sprawl issue here, and the issue is, what is it, what do they want, and then how do we make it so that it gets corrected properly? Because by doing this separate, it's becoming more and more complicated and more, what's it?
So right now, the two lots that are in operation now are cars crossed over, or used cars from one lot brought over to the other lot, or vice versa? Or, do you know?
I'm not aware. I do know just from the signage on the building, there's arrows that say new cars this way, used cars this way, but aside from that, I'm not sure how the two interrelate.
All right. So I think we've gotten a general flavor and we understand this. The question is, I think the applicant's got to take a look at this and make a decision as to, is this going to be a standalone or is this going to be amended? And I think if your relationship with across the street poses a problem, because you can't be, if that's not done properly, because you're going to be trading cars back and forth there, not selling them. It's the same operation. So part of the operation can't be legal and part of it can't be, non-compliant.
Understood. I'll speak to the applicant. If the special permit is lapsed on this lot, certainly we'll put that together. The question as to whether or not we come back as an isolated project or kind of an interconnected campus layout, I'll work through that and then we'll be back to you in January.
The only thing I would say to make sure we kind of close all the administrative loops is, if you come back with an amended special permit for everything, if you could just submit a new application form that identifies the properties that are seeking the special use permit amendment.
Understood.
Yeah, I think at least I would favor the idea that this has all got to be properly made compliant so that, and I think you're operating them together, and I think you've just got to get that dealt with properly so that it's, everything has the appropriate permits. All right, everyone else want to put this off then? Anyone object? Ron, Meg? Okay, Greta? All right, so we'll put this on for January. We'll carry it forward. Why don't you try to move? I know it's a tough month to move forward on these things, but if you could try to do it, and maybe Charlie, if you could follow with them, or if they have any questions, they can ask you. But it would be nice to be able to get this organized because they want to move on it quickly. We certainly don't need more wallpaper, and let's see if we can make it happen.
Understood. Someone may come down to what we have by way of surveys and whatnot for these other properties. So if we can be back to you in January, we will be.
Okay, but I think at least work towards what it is you're trying to accomplish so we can get it there, or we can decide on it. Man, I mean, it's more of that. Okay. All right.
Go for your time.
Thank you very much. And then the next matter, my paper's at 533 Walton Avenue, the continued public hearing on that.
I think the next one is the Waverly application, unless I'm reading the.
Oh, okay, well, then I changed. That was I know that changed around.
Oh, yeah, they changed.
It changed, all right.
Sorry, when did it change?
Do Walton next?
I didn't realize that.
Is Walton here?
When is the
There was a
last-
second. revision, Paul knows Waverly is still a public hearing.
Let's see, okay.
Yeah, no, so is Walton Avenue, right?
Yeah. I'm just going
All right.
to,
All right. Well, I don't know. I had Walton. I don't really care. Is Walton here?
Yes.
But I think we just brought up the people for,
Yeah.
which one would you like to do first?
Well, I had asked for Walton because that was
All right.
online for the next one.
We'll
so
do
let's-
Walton first.
Okay, so we'll do Walton. This was a public hearing, area variance. This was, we have received, let's see.
Sorry, Paul, you'll be next.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Paul. It was, they changed the order on this. This will be, all right. So this is the property over in Oriental on Walton Avenue. When I first moved here, I was always intrigued by it, because it's sort of like, how did this get here? It's a lovely place. And I used to have lovely flowers and gardens, but it was one of those houses that I would say, if I told someone to come to my front door, I would have no idea where to go. So let's see, we have some issues here. We had, just looking at why this was put forward. The existing lot is non-conforming. We're talking about the building department deciding if they knew where the front yard was. And I guess you did give us a new, I guess it was just a signed plan now, correct?
Yes.
Right,
Can you hear me?
we can.
yes,
Well, from the last meeting we got from your board, the task to define the yardage designation, which we then connected with the building department. We made a plan which you apparently got there, where we determine front and the two side yards. The building department basically gave back to us their request. It's going to be on our terms to determine that, and they would review it and agree. I guess that's what I understand from Mr. Drogan, who I talked to. And by the designation of the yardage we have now on the site plan proposed, that also would then give us the definition on the proposed landing with the stairs, where this falls into as well.
sorry, could you say that again? What?
Right, the follow-up on the two items we had to determine from the last meeting was the yard designation, and then also from the yard designation, the definition where the new proposed landing with the stairs would fall, which is actually added on in the amendment of the application on page number 9. I submitted that as well, where I defined the 3 components for the landing with stairs, which is maximum 3-foot protection into any yard, then no closer than 5 feet to any yard, and then not to exceed 25% into any yard. And I therefore then designated exactly where this falls in reference to those minimum requirements or maximum requirements.
Did you need any more variances than you had asked for? Did the variances?
Well, the thing is that the presentation from last time is exactly what I have here. The stair, this particular stair was always in the presentation. It was not determined that we needed this that definition which I have now on the application added on or amended on.
I think we definitely agreed that it was not a projection. It was something that is structural, and that if it goes encroaches onto a required yard would need a variance. And I do think that it's an extension of a pre-existing nonconformity of the encroachment on the yard, that it would be a variance. It's my view.
Any board members have questions on this application?
Now I'm unclear. These projections, are they pre-existing nonconformity, or are they new as a result of the work that you're proposing?
What we proposing, actually, the existing stair is actually just to the side yard be overlapping onto the right of way. So we bring in the new stair landing to the front yard putting it back into the property. Okay, so that is off the previous non-conforming use, but with that, we obviously asking for these projections which are in chapter 342, section 14, to answer those projections in reference to that they're not conforming as per zoning. I mean, I could show maybe what the current situation is with the stair on the survey. Would that help maybe so that you can compare it? No?
If you have, you can put it on the screen, sure.
Yeah, sure. Let me just do this very quick. It's right here. You can see, let me just go a little bit bigger here. You can see currently there is a landing with the stair going towards.
You're not on my screen. Can anyone else?
No, it's just a blank.
It says you started the share.
Okay, let me just go back.
Hey, you're there, you said.
Okay. Can you see that now?
No.
It's not good. Any success here?
There you go.
Yeah. There you
Okay.
go.
I
Okay.
think you actually have to click what you were
Okay. So
show us.
you can see my cursor there. That's where the landing is, and the stair goes towards still as that.
Right.
And that's where you can see where the stair actually is literally encroaching onto the right of way. So our proposal is to bring that stair around into the front yard onto the property again. Okay. So that's the.
Can you show us that one, to show us the site plan with the new proposal?
Right here. You see that?
Is your property line end over there on that edge?
That's the property line here and here.
Or what's the rectangle? What's the other part where it says front yard B? Directly under the front yard? Is that on your, isn't that your property as well, the 67.55 by
That's
6?
67.55 goes from up here, down here, and then across to the front yard line.
I'm looking at something that I picked up, and it has front yard,
Yeah,
side yard, but I'm looking at something here that says.
Okay, no.
This is, yeah, that's
the old
drawing.
version. Yeah, that's the old version.
He was showing us the old drawing.
The new version is this one here. Here you see the new version. Okay.
Now we can't see it again. Go
Click
back to the
new version.
If you go back to the old one, we'll disregard what you called forward, front, and side, and we can just look where the stairs were placed, perhaps.
Okay, all right. Let's go to the old version here. Okay. Can you see that?
No.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Okay, so
Yeah, front yard B is now side yard B.
if the front yard C here and the front yard B, these are the front yard place where it's at. Yeah. That's where we defined this stair in our new amended definition.
Right.
Considering this the front yard and this the side yard.
Yeah, listen, they pulled the staircase off of the property line, put it in the front yard.
Yeah, from here. It's currently running this way, yes.
Where is the fence? Though? There's a fence on that side of the street, on the,
Yeah, that's the fence is here. The fence is up.
So what I'm saying is you really have that property that, I mean, I don't know your deed or your title, but you've effectively you've gone out into that area.
That's currently the case.
And what makes you think that you don't own that area? Do we have a survey here?
That's the survey plan.
No, this
I
isn't
think
a
that it's
survey.
a stamped survey.
No, this is a proposed site plan with yard designations. There's nothing here that says this is a survey. There's no surveyor seal.
I can bring you back to the survey. Let me try that.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Fingers
Because-
crossed. Fingers crossed. We're gonna get to see it.
Yeah, because the land that's outside where they walk, where the steps went onto, it was inside the fenced area.
Okay, here we go. That's the survey.
No, there we go, okay.
Can you
So
see?
let's
Okay.
survey of the 2021.
Yeah, I can, let me reduce it so you can see the,
Let's see the survey reading. Survey of, let's bring that up a little closer if we could, please.
okay, good.
Okay. All right. So here's my question. I see a survey here. I can't tell from looking at what I'm seeing where the boundary of the property is. You got several boundary lines.
Well, this, you can, the heavy set line, these are the 14380, that's the line along Cleveland Avenue, and 76.55 is along Steelers Avenue, and the 126.95 is along Walton Avenue.
So there's 14 feet that goes out towards Claflin from the property. You've got that fenced in.
That's the fence, yeah, out here.
Right, and no, and on Claflin as well, on Stiles and on Claflin.
Other side.
What I'm saying is, you've been always using, Brian, you were asking about where that property, where it went on to, but they've always been using that property and they're fenced it in. That's why I was surprised. You see
You're talking about the fence here, right?
yeah, I'm talking about the fence there. I'm telling you. And when you walk by this property, the fencing all around, what you're suggesting is, and I'm very surprised by this, but what you're saying is that the fencing, that the property is significantly smaller than the area used by the property, correct?
The fence is not, you can literally see the fence is 20 feet out from the property line here and 11 feet that side.
Yeah, but you probably have about 15. My guess is you've got more than 25% of this property as depicted on this outside of the property line, assuming that's the case, and it's used by.
Well, it's
it's used by the property.
this is all grassland. It's not, if the place.
No. It's property though, that's used by this property exclusively. It's fenced in. That's why, I walk by this property regularly and I always thought it was the property. What this is showing me is, if you take a look at the Walton side, it's like 20 feet from the property line out. It's not the property. You go to the Claflin side, it's probably the same, if not more. Well, but it goes right up to Claflin.
11 feet on the Claflin side.
And then on the Style side, what do you got? 7 to 10 feet? 6 to 10? Yeah.
6, 9.
If I may ask a question, is the solid black line your setback?
The solid black line is the property line.
Okay, I just wanted that for the record.
And what's that based upon? A deed? Title report?
That's survey out based on the deeds, yes.
Does the village own the remaining portions of the land?
Not anymore.
That's a good point. I don't know if you understand.
No, Charlie. This has been, see the amount of property is, it's a significant percentage of the property is outside of the property line.
Right. I'm just
You-
trying to figure out if, you know, if your variance requests relate to improvements that are inside your property.
I think it does. It looks like what you have
Yeah.
pathways and you set up a fence for sure, but otherwise you've built, this house is built within the lot lines.
Yes.
Sir,
That's,
could you drop this, can you drop the survey so I can see that legend above the signature of the surveyor? Yeah, and then drop it down a little bit.
just, let me just, okay, good.
Okay, stop. That's it. Can you enlarge that? All right.
And I
Move
just,
it over. Yeah, let's move it over a little bit so we can see that, please.
got it. Here you
So
go.
it's a survey of. Survey
It's not,
completed and elevations, December 9th. When is that? 2000 or 2020? 2000.
20, it's 2020.
And then it says revised 2021.
revised, yes. Mhm.
Usually on a survey, you would see a line that have property line. This is. All right. I mean, it certainly is a unique property and it's becoming more and more unique as we look at it. These people just buy the house recently?
No, they own the house for quite a while. They bought the house. I can tell you this in a second. They bought the house in 2016.
5 years.
In May 3rd, 2016.
All right. I mean, they use it and that's the end of that. All right, it is what it is.
I think they're talking about a variance for coverage, and that's building within the lot line, so it's not interfering with any of this other property that we're recognizing. And returning the stairs is actually staying within the lot line. So I believe it's just, what is the square footage? Because it is right up alongside its lot line. Is it increasing the square footage that's within that required yard? And if it is, then I believe it needs a variance. And it looks like it's behind a fence and way back from the street line. So I don't know that we would have a problem, but I think that it rightfully requires a variance because it's an increase in the nonconformity.
Well, in addition to that, I'd like to know whether or not it's 5 feet from that lot line. Because if it's not 5 feet from the lot line, you'll need a variance for that as well.
You
No,
talk-
that's what I'm saying, that already the house is within the yard, the required yard. So it's already pre-existing non-conforming. So
Pre-existing, yeah.
it would be an increase in the pre-existing non-conformity.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So where would the increase of the nonconformity be then?
Because the stairs, I believe the landing gets bigger and there's more square footage running along it than what is existing now. When it's turned and the landing is larger and the stairs are a bit longer.
Do exterior stairs count towards the improvement?
That's where we looked at that code about projections. 3 steps wouldn't count, but it's exceeded. You have to look at the code, but it appears to me that it's exceeded what could be put in without any variance.
Right, and it says right on here that it's 12.3 feet projecting into the front yard.
Yes,
Did your clients gain any rights to the property outside of the property line when they acquired it?
I would not know that.
I mean, your deed or your title, I mean, anybody walking by this would never have an idea that that's where the property line is. Well, they wouldn't because there's a fence around the other outside.
But that's not really, it's interesting, but it's not really our issue.
No, it's not. No, but well, unless it's theirs. I mean, but he seems to say it's not.
Yes, I
It's
guess.
like he's asking to build within the lot line that the surveyor said is his lot.
That he,
Not his lot line.
yeah.
Right, I mean, they're.
What's unusual is that you're putting the meets and bounds and the curve on the road on Claflin you're including that on the survey, which you would normally never do. Because that would be like across the street from the house. 25 feet away, probably 20 feet away. You know what I mean? The corner of Stiles and Claflin comes together there. All right, well.
It might be helpful if I could just make a suggestion to have the applicant walk us through the exact area variances they're requesting, and we could maybe discuss questions on each one.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie. That's a good idea.
Right, yeah, because they need the lot coverage.
Yeah, I mean, the one is the lot coverage, which I have on the, maybe I can show show this on another page where I have the tabulation included. I'm going to the new site plan here. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Let me go to the tabulation.
Right.
Oh, yeah, there you are. So basically, here are all the new side yard and all that indicated based on the new survey I prepared for the yardage. And the maximum lot coverage is currently at 40.54%, which the increase of the voided area where we're going to enclose into the kitchen, we're going to be at 41.96%. So that would be a variance because the maximum is 35% of maximum lot coverage. Okay, that would be the one variance. And
Except unless about the stairs. So you should take us through the stairs, the building projector.
just walk you right through here. Yeah, again, as I said, there are three components. The first one is maximum 3 feet projection into any yard. With the new yard definitions, it projects 12.3 feet into the front yard and 13.75 feet into the side yard B.
That's existing or proposed? Proposed.
That's proposed. So there would be two variances because of the 3 foot projection into any yard, the maximum. Okay. Then the next component is it cannot be closer than 5 feet to any yard.
Right.
The front yard is okay with 12.7 feet, that's fine. But I need to the side yard B, I'm only at 1.25 feet away. I will need a variance there. Then the last component that any of those projection cannot exceed 25% into any yard. That stair landing is 100% encroaching into the front and side yard. So I will need a variance there. And these are the variances basically we're talking about.
I might be a little confused, but one question I just have is, and Meg, this is to your point that the stairs aren't a projection. So are we looking at the right code section for the variances, considering that this is not a projection?
Well, that's, yeah.
If we just considered it an extension of a structural extension of the building, because it doesn't comply with what's described as in the projections. Is that possible, Charlie, to consider it a part of the building?
Yeah, it's a question that just kind of struck me as I was reviewing the plans.
Well, the landing, which is next to the kitchen, is that covered or not covered?
Uncovered. The gray area, which is the stair we're talking about, is not covered.
So its only purpose is you walk up the stairs and then you have that platform, and that's all before you go into the house.
Exactly.
So it's not considered square footage for the house at all.
No,
Not covered. So
I wouldn't.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
thinking that might be projection.
It's too large. It's not how it's built. It's this, I think it's the side. Or you're saying that it's a really big projection.
I'm saying it's a really big projection because it doesn't have a roof. It's not gonna be floor area ratio for the house. It's just something that somebody utilizes to get up into the house, the whole thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this required side yard is all the way 15 feet is the required side yard. Is that correct?
That would be the side area. I mean, just look at this. This would be literally the by zoning all the yardage setbacks in, shown here. Gives you a reference where we are.
That's amazing. That's
Wow.
great purchases.
That's 15 feet side, 15 side, and 25 front yard.
Could you show us again, move to the slide where we see the stairs as they are now?
By the way, if you look at a visual of this property, it looks, you would add on all of the property. That's the interesting thing here. The visual is completely different because the fencing is out by the road.
Is it essential to the plans, the proposed plans, that you rejigger the stairs? Is there any way you could, is that just
Can you see that?
you're filling in that space, is that correct?
That space here? Or which one? Sorry. Oh,
Where the stairs are now, as they are.
okay. Okay, let me show you. I have an overlay.
Uh-huh.
It's probably right here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, here you can literally see this is the side yard now, and you can see the brown line is what's currently there. Okay, that's the exterior. That's currently the stair leading up to the kitchen.
Mhm.
What we are proposing is filling that in this way here and bringing this entry area out, and the new stair landing would go, it's indicating the blue color there, okay?
Mhm. Just seems if you had the door still stay where it was, bring the steps back a little bit perhaps, and not try to put in the new stair, then you wouldn't need another variance. You would just need the one that you actually noticed and applied for.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it looks like, in my mind, we need to decide if it's the variance is required for the extra large projection, or more simply, it's an extension of the building and it's the extension of the non-conforming yard of the building.
That's current.
I think it has to be renoticed.
What's the name of the owner? Sorry.
Ellen Dent,
Can you spell it for me? Yeah.
there must be either Ellen or Amy Dancis. One of them should be on Zoom.
They raise their hand, I can promote them.
Can you spell the last name for me?
Last name Dancis. It's on the title sheet here. Dancis, Dancis here.
ZIS. And that's Amy or
Oh, Ellen. They should be, as I'm reading, they should be on Zoom.
Yeah, we're right here.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
What are we waiting on?
They are on Zoom. I cannot, somehow they're muted. They have to, okay, here we are.
We're here. Do you have a question for us?
Okay. Alan and Amy are on board here.
Yep.
So I guess our issue is whether these are additional variances that require a notice, or whether this is just an extension of the non-conforming.
Even if it's an extension of the non-conforming, we've done that before. When you increase the non-conformity, you need the variance for it. That's what we've done before, isn't it?
So we need a notice anyway, are you saying, Meg?
I'm saying either way, I just don't know which way to classify it, whether it's the projection that's oversized or it's an extension of the non-conforming structure of the building. But it certainly looks like they're building something in the required yard, in the minimum required yard. Dave, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I was just looking at the map.
So
What was the question?
To me, they're building something,
Right.
the minimum required yard. And to me, it seems either we classify it as a variance is required for this projection, or it's an extension of the building that's an extension of the minimum non-conforming encroachment on the
Yeah.
yard.
It continues the same. It doesn't enhance it, does it?
So I would think it's one of those
Right.
would require a variance. How does everybody else feel?
They got the property, what, 2019?
No,
In 2016.
2016. In
Oh,
May-
I'm sorry, May 10th, 2016.
May 3rd, 2016.
Yeah. Just trying to see a deed.
Chair, while you're looking for that info, if I may ask a question, do you have an elevation of that rear patio? And is there a step, once you open that, but when you come out of that door, is there a step down onto that landing, or is it level?
You asking? Are you asking me?
I am.
That's a 4-inch step.
It's a what?
4 inches.
4 inches.
Okay. And each rise on each step is 8 inches. What's the rise on those steps?
7 and 7 inches. Okay.
The direction that I was going with that is if there was a formal step going onto that landing, if there was an 8-inch drop there, which the code allows, you're going onto that 3-foot area.
You
You
can-
would be able to eliminate a step, and then that would be 3 steps instead of 4.
You can see what's proposed. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's proposed section.
All right.
Yeah, I think there's 5 stories.
See here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and then a threshold.
Oh, yeah, 5, yeah.
So just a couple comments from me.
Yeah.
If we have 5 steps, right? I like the idea. I mean, I don't know if you want to take this into the record, but I like the idea that the projection of the stair is no longer over the lot line, and we are turning it into the yard. So that's a plus for me right away. And then as for the amount of stairs, if they were potentially by design of the architect, if he approves it, to drop the level of the platform of the deck, we'll call it, or porch, down another 4 inches, that would change the elevation of the stairs. And if he is to, the last part of this, is to raise the grade in the area of where that step was, to eliminate 1 more step and a half, he would bring it down to 3 steps of a projection going into that yard. It's a workaround, and it would be code compliant, where those steps would now be 3, and there would be a projection of 3 steps instead of the variance.
So if I'm understanding, a full stack on the building to the landing, and then 3 more steps.
Correct, and you would have a pathway beneath that, given in stone dust, so you don't increase your impervious surface.
Yeah.
And you would have a projection of 3 steps.
Got it. Can be done.
Yes, but that would not save you from the addition being so close to the property line. But you would still need the variance for that, obviously.
Right.
Well, because it's a projection now, that's just the 3 feet. So it's considered a projection. So it doesn't carry the same weight when it goes into a required yard. Charlie, is that correct? If it was a true projection, you're permitted to do that in a required yard.
But even if you do the stepping as you suggested.
Dennis, can you hear? You're not talking because it's a little noisy.
Very nice.
Yeah, I'm in the quietest room you could ever be in. It's not me.
But Charlie, if it's just 3 steps, so it complies with the definition of projection, which are allowed in minimum required yards, then it would not need a variance for the addition of a landing in 3 steps. Is that correct?
So if it's classified as a projection, and I'm reading from 342.14a, it says that shall not project more than 3 feet into any required yard, but not closer than 5 feet to a property line. And the sum of the total projections in any 1 yard shall not exceed 25%. So even if you classify it as a projection, you still need to meet those dimensional requirements.
Okay. Well, it seems like there's no way to get around the fact that they need a variance.
Right.
Most probably would
Unless.
not be opposed to granting it, but I think that we keep looking at this and they need a variance.
Well, one thing worth mentioning, I don't think that they need a variance for the 25% rule, because that it says the sum total of such projection. So this item shall not exceed 25% of the overall dimension of the wall from which they project. So that would be the entire frontage of the house, even though they do have another staircase going down already, which might classify. But I still don't think that you have to reach the 25%, but you do have to have something for the lot line. You're only what, one feet? 1.25 feet.
1.25, yeah.
Right. So I mean that's never going to be 5 feet. It's better than what's there now, because right now you've got a staircase going over the lot line. It's just a matter of the size of the projection into the yard, whether or not we'd be able to grant a variance for that, or whether or not that requires a notice, as you said.
Well, the purpose of the variance here, well, Charlie, is because it's creating a larger nonconformity, but yet it's decreasing the nonconformity, isn't it?
Or we're talking about.
Is
the
it
state.
decreasing?
Yeah, it's decreasing it.
How is it decreasing? Because the
Well, I
stairs
guess because the
are
stairs,
not, the stairs this way are shorter than the landing plus the stairs going are.
well, because now the entrance to the, you're right, you're absolutely right, but I guess now the entrance crosses beyond the line of the property, whereas as proposed, it's less.
So, but in a dimensional sense, it's not reducing it. You're saying it has significance. So I would think that we would grant it, but it still needs a variance because the required side yard is so much farther away.
All right, and the application here was not for a variance. Well, what was the variance for?
Coverage,
I'm sorry?
coverage, the percentage of coverage.
Charlie, under the village law, do we have the right to do anything that should have been done? Or do we have to renotice? Or does this have to be noticed?
So if you're adding a variance to the application, it should be renoticed.
But I would say that the letter of determination from the building department did not point this out. That, and they can only come to us if they could have only asked for it if the building department had told them that they required it. So I don't think that they should have to pay for it. I think this is a miss on the village's part. So I do think that they need to renotice and come back, but I think that this should be, the cost of this should be absorbed by the village.
Well, okay. Yeah, Charlie, there's a provision of the village law that indicates that when the board hears a matter, it can do what should have been done. I don't have it in front of me, but it's Article 7 of the village law, New York law. I'm just thinking if there's not, then they've got to come back and they've got to just notice this for a variance, an area variance, right? But Meg makes a very good point. They couldn't have come in here for an area variance since they had not been denied because of it, right?
Well, it's perfectly within your ZBA jurisdiction to require a variance if it was missed by the original building determination. That's no problem.
All right. But under that section of law, we can't do it without requiring a notice. Is that the idea? I just remember there was a section that talked about that, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I can look into it, but generally, if a variance has been noticed and you're adding a totally new variance, it needs to be renoticed. Similarly, if you increase the size of a variance and those dimensions were included in the notice, you should also renotice that.
All right.
But we don't have that situation here.
So they could basically just, all they have to do is renotice this for January's meeting, right?
Yeah, and it really all depends on if they're going to change the plan per Dennis's suggestion to classify it as a projection. And then the variances would be based on that Article 14 of the zoning code, or if they're going to keep it as is and the building department feels that it's not a projection because it's 5 stairs or whatever the case may be, then the variance would be from a different provision of the code.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's the easiest for us? I mean, I guess that's the real sense here. I mean, I don't know that it has to go backwards. Then you're going to go back to the building department to come back that way, right? And what is the feeling of the board? Is this something that the board's inclined to grant, in which case I'm not concerned in this particular property about the substance, about the size, if you will, of the variance, because the property is completely unique. It's not like it's not precedential. It's not going to have any precedent for anything.
I think the applicant has got to make a decision as to whether or not they want to change the structural plan. I don't think that's really for us to say.
No,
the drawing that they put in front of us,
right,
needs a variance, as is.
Right.
I think if you're asking like a demeanor question, I can personally say that I think that this plan works better than what's currently there. I know that it does project, it does require a variance, but I don't find it objectionable.
Yeah, I would be,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, aren't they better off just keeping what they have than starting to
Yeah,
back again? That's my thinking. I don't know. Charlie, what do you, or
that's their choice, right? That's up to
it
them.
is their choice. It is their choice. That is.
Hi, can I, as a property owner, can I ask a question?
By all means.
Great, so, it sounds like is there any way we could get this? It sounds like there's no way we can get this approved tonight. So it looks like we're going with one variance versus a different variance. Our preference would be, unless we can get approval tonight, would be to keep the plans as is. Unless you guys tell us that's not possible.
I don't have I think we can just kind of discuss it with the board, what the board's feeling is on this. My feeling is it's better than it was. I understand the unique nature of it. And this is what you have here. So I don't have a problem with you staying where it is, but I don't know what other members feel. Greta, you around or?
No, I agree. The variances are technically substantial. That being said, as you said, David, it's a unique piece of property and there's really not much you can do with it. And it is improving. So I have no problem with the plan. I guess it's just a question of renoticing.
I don't know. Brian, you have any feeling on this either way?
Yeah, I already said, I think it's an improvement. I don't find it objectionable. I don't think it's going to affect anybody else's property or any of the other tenants that we have to look at for a variance. So, I would not have a problem with it as long as we know what it is we're granting a variance for.
Right, Meg?
Yeah, I feel the same. I just think that we need to.
All right, so then let's get Charlie, so basically the fastest way to do this for them, and they've been through this, is to probably just notice it for the amended, or put in an application, amend the application, notice it, put a sign up and call it, and come in on the next meeting, correct?
Yeah, what I could do if the board wants me to do, and if the applicant's not going to change anything per the suggestions that Dennis had, I could take this plan and draft resolutions on accordance with what you said here tonight. The applicant would resubmit for the new variance that we've identified, notice it, you'd have another hearing at the next meeting, you'd close it, and the resolutions would be prepared.
Yeah, I think that works well.
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't mean just for the applicant. I want you to understand that.
We haven't
doesn't-
discussed the other variants. I don't have a problem with the other variants either, though, about the additional coverage. That seems fairly minor, the additional.
Yeah, I just want the applicant to understand that's just, we're approaching it this way. That doesn't mean it's been voted on, and it doesn't mean we've approved it, but we're trying to find a way to bring it back on expeditiously.
may I ask you a question? The request variances, now the new ones, are they then based what I already have kind of projected here on the proposed landing with the stairs on the building projections with the yardage setbacks and the, like the chapter 342, section 14, based on that? Is that the fact? I mean, do I read this right?
I believe.
You're asking how you should describe the variance that you're applying for? Is that what you're asking?
Is it what I already described it a little bit? Is that the way we go? And so I know how to describe the variance. So I'm on the right track.
That's correct to say it's an oversized projection.
Based on section.
In the side yard, yeah. And you have a side yard with you, right?
If I just may go back to my original thing here, if you don't mind, a second, right here. basically along that line. That would be the new variance description.
I guess I have a question for Dennis. So Dennis, if they keep the stairs as is,
Mhm.
would this take it out of the realm of being a projection, and then therefore you just apply the front yard and side yard setbacks to the structure to the stairs?
Sorry, one more time with the question?
So if they, as they have it planned now, because it has more than the 3 stairs, would the building department classify this as part of the structure, and therefore the 342.14 for projections doesn't apply, and we would simply apply the front yard and side yard setbacks?
Okay. Okay.
So it is a structure. The stairs will work both ways. It's a projection, but at the end of the day, it's always a structure. So in the way it's drawn right now, I would prefer the layout to be like this with those 5 steps. If they choose to, go what I suggested, I'm fine with that as well. And if you approve this or don't approve it, we're going to have a workaround anyway. So they'll figure it out. So it's really up to the board's decision of what they choose to do.
But do you think they can apply for sort of a simple variance of extending the nonconformity of that side yard? Or should they specify all of those differences in terms of 342.14?
Right.
That Renee has put there. Which variance should they apply for if they're going to do the design that they have shown us tonight with no changes?
So I would go for the side yard setback. So if there is ever to be an addition or expanding that area to a larger deck, I would prefer if it was done with the side yard setback.
So it's about the side yard and the front yard then, right?
Yeah, it's about the extension of the pre-existing nonconformity inside the encroachment on the required minimum side yard.
Okay. Okay, so it's not about the protection. It's basically looking into regular setback for side and front yard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. If that's what you're telling us, then I can definitely define that this way.
I think that's also the cleanest approach on this.
Yeah.
That made a lot of sense, Dennis, in case they ever want to build up over it, start building porches.
Do I get a rejection letter from the building department, or I just come in with an application for these new variances?
I think you can just come to us, right, Charlie?
Yeah, you can just come to us.
Yeah.
And one last question for the board. Since we weren't notified about this before and therefore couldn't put it in our original application for the variance, who should we talk to about getting the cost of all of this reimbursed from the village, as you mentioned before?
It would just be the reimbursement for this additional that you're doing, not for the original.
It would just not be a charge for the amendment.
Okay.
You're going to do an amendment, right?
Right. And then the cost of the mailing as well. Is that something that we could get?
No.
reimbursed from the village?
I don't think so.
I don't. That's what I'm suggesting. It doesn't seem fair because if the building department had gotten it right, they wouldn't have had to do a second mailing. But I guess that's up to the village.
Well, I don't think the village will do it, but you do what you wish with that. You can go there. I don't see how. I think that actually everyone who comes here for a variance is basically, many people are appealing a denial, saying that the building department may have been wrong, but I don't know. I think I could say this much. I think we can arrange for you not to pay another filing fee because of the amendment with Charlie's. I think that could be done without a problem.
Yeah, granting that is kind of outside of my purview, but
Yeah.
you might,
All right.
I would maybe direct you to the village manager to have that discussion.
Brittany, maybe you understand the issue, so maybe Brittany, you.
Yeah, I think we could speak to the building department and the village manager and explain the mailings and the application fee. I agree. I think the application fee would be null, but the mailings, I'm not sure of that part.
Well, just a moment. Do we charge for amending an application? I don't believe we do. I don't think there's a charge for that.
Not that I'm aware of, but
Right.
it's a different variance. It's a separate variance.
But it's an application. It's a pending application that amends. We often will amend it or we'll add something to it.
Correct. So there might not even be a fee. So
I don't
it would
think
be the
it's
mailing
involved.
price potentially, but we could bring that up to everybody involved.
Well, okay.
Thank you, Brittany.
No problem. I will be in touch with the owners.
I would suggest to the applicant that sometimes you're better, depending on what's involved dollar-wise, you may be better off just moving forward. And because if you ask for something, you may get the answer you don't want, but that's up to you. I don't think there should be a charge. I don't think there'll be a charge for amending I don't think we've ever charged for amending an application when we've pointed out something. But I'll leave that to. Okay, so we're going to adjourn this till the next meeting. And I would just press upon the applicant the timing involved on this, because you have to have, when do they have to have this application in by? Do we know when this has to be in by? I don't know this, I don't.
I have to check the dates for 2022. We were just posting those, so I will check those and I could let you know. I just have to backtrack to figure out the mailings. I
Yes,
believe it
well-
would be 10 days prior to the meeting, and I think it's January 6th is the 2022.
Okay,
I will send an email directly to the architect and homeowners.
sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Does that work? Everybody on the board all right with that?
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll put this over, and we understand that the applicant will be amending to include the other variance that we've noted, was not noted before, but it is noted now, and it'll be addressed. All right,
Thank you.
all right, thank you, sir. Let's- Okay, just a moment. All right. Does anyone want a break, or do you want to continue right through?
Let's keep going, because I think we let Mr. Noto.
Next one is 544, 432, and 442 Waverly Avenue. This is let's see. Who's this? This is Paul Nuttall, I believe.
Yep.
Hi, Paul, how are you? Good evening.
How are you, Dave? Good to see you again.
Oh, good. I can't.
Everybody.
I
Nice to
I
be
can't
back.
even see you. I can't. Oh, there you are. I couldn't
I'm
see you
here.
down there.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right. So this is an application seeking a variance to lease the premises for storage of equipment related to the construction, power, and HVAC industries. Put my notes here. The issue here is that you've applied for an area variance. You've provided us with information. Your position has been set forth with regard to why you believe it is an area variance and not a use variance.
Yes.
That's something the board in its deliberations will address. I assume if, just for argument purposes, it was clear, in the event, since you've applied for the area, in the event the board were to find that it's not an area variance, you'll be without prejudice to your coming back the other way. But you've submitted on that. We have those papers. So I think what we could deal with now is additional information and that you have submitted or on the actual substance of this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to discuss the cases that we provided, if you thought, how they may relate to the issue at hand or not. It's up to you.
Well, I think you've written on that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's up to-
I did.
remember,
I think they're helpful.
You've given us the case. Yeah, I think it's an issue. It's an interesting issue. I think it's something that's more, I think you laid out your position, you've laid out the cases. I think, at least from my standpoint, I've read them and I've read some other cases. It's something that we'll deal with in terms of after the hearing is closed, from my standpoint. Maybe other members will have questions on it.
Okay, no, it's
I-
fine.
but this is
We
major-
also,
Yeah.
we did send another letter. Some members of the board raised some logistical questions about it, and we addressed those. I have Joe Rena's with us, on the site development guy, and potentially Dominic, who also works with Milo. And I don't know if Joe Hill is on, because I don't know, Brittany, if you see anyone with a 203 area code. But, I think, I hope we've been able to address some of the questions you had about the operation and what, goes on the site, and how, what we do, what they would like to do there. The fact that if it is an area variance, the 5 factors you would consider, that it would not change the character of the neighborhood or, change the essential operations of what goes on in that area.
Okay, I'm sure there were different questions people have. One of the questions initially is, you're talking about this is not going to be, the applicant is not going to be doing this. It's going to be a lessee, correct?
Correct. He will lease it to Sunbelt Rentals, correct?
Okay, and they're not the applicant, correct?
No,
They're not.
because they don't own the property.
Right, okay. Is there any?
And you, of course, you could, if you were inclined to grant it, you could grant it to limit it to, this particular tenant, and this, to limit and any kind of use, so it wouldn't be in perpetuity. So, we're certainly prepared and would even encourage you to do that.
Okay. Is there going to be, what's going to take place outside besides the storage? And maybe this was covered. I was having a communication problem last meeting when this was on. Just trying to dial in. Couldn't.
Generally nothing. I mean, as we mentioned at the last meeting, the generator equipment, quite frankly, they don't really want it on the site much, because it's for storing it when it goes out. They don't make money when it's sitting on the site. They make money by getting it out to municipalities or other places that actually need generators. So the hope is they will not be there for any length of time. When they are there, there's a 2-story masonry building. So if there's any routine minor maintenance, it would be done inside that building. And that's pretty much it. They would be brought, in and out of the site, and all of that's done on site. Nothing is done on the street.
Will they be operated outside?
No, they're not. They're not being operated on this site. They're going to be left on this site and then taken to other sites where they will be used. But this is for storing them for other people to use.
Not starting them up or anything of that. They will not be started.
Oh, they might be tested. I mean, there might be some testing, but minimal. I mean, the objective is to get them off-site and to a location where they can be used.
How many? I know you've got them on the plan. I didn't count the plan.
The max would be 104.
104 max. Okay. And the sizes, I know you had a note on your plans, examples of things to be stored. Is
correct.
there more than just an example? Is there a size configuration or a maximum size?
That what you see on the plan would be it. Nothing bigger than what's on that plan.
Well, but there's no dimensions on that, to my knowledge.
Well, there are. Like this one on the 185 CFM, it's 140 inches long by 69 inches wide by 62 inches high.
I stand corrected. You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
All right.
That's right.
But hold it. I know why. But on the wait a minute. Here we go. I was right too. We're both right.
Well, on the 120 kW.
Oh, the 20 kW diesel.
Yeah, I don't see that, and I don't see on the 120. Yeah, I don't see the size on that. And I don't know, is Joe or Dennis? Joe, would you know the answer to that question?
Not offhand. I can do a little searching while we're talking and see if I have that information.
Right. And when you have the dimensions, even on the others, are those dimensions from the ground up or from the actual machinery without the I don't know, the fabricated?
Yeah, they don't make that clear.
Yeah.
I assume it's from ground up. That would be the important. That would be an important piece of information.
Okay.
Especially if you have like a clearance issue or something like that, they would probably do it from the ground up.
Because I see here in your diesel air compressor, there it has the dimensions, but not the weight. The other one is 2,000 pounds, and you don't have the dimensions. Yeah, I would like the dimensions on these. And then what about this one on the left, this 15 ton? That's one of them as well, I assume, right?
Yes.
Okay,
That's one item that would be, that could be there. Yes.
right. That's an example. So I'm just looking for, again, on that one, I'm looking for the size and for the weight.
Okay.
Who is going to be the market for renting these for the most part?
Well, the market would be municipalities, hospitals. For example, when the county set up that COVID center at the treatment center at the county center, you saw those huge tents off 119, those, right off the county center. Those were heated and operated with generators like this. So it's a situation like that. Anytime there's an emergency situation, anywhere around where there's going to be, major construction, like in the city, they would be using these kinds of generators. So there's definitely a demand, as we learned, obviously with Ida.
Are these all manufactured by the same people?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And what would their name of the manufacturer be? Do we know?
I can't read it on it. The print is too small.
Yeah, I would say they're not necessarily the same manufacturer.
I mean, the dehumidifier would be different.
Yeah, I don't,
It's hard to tell.
I think the look of them, the color and whatnot is symbolizes the Sunbelt brand, but they could be various companies, I think.
Right. Do they have operations elsewhere?
Oh, Sunbelt?
Sunbelt.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I mean, yes.
Well, you have a lease in place that's subject to approval, I thought I read, right?
Yes, contingent upon the municipal approvals, yes.
Right. Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit more about
Yeah.
the HVAC equipment, which is not going to be mobile? Are those going to be on pallets, or they're going to be in boxes? They're only going to be new? Are they going to be used? You give us a little bit more background as to the HVAC systems that are going to be stored?
There's certainly, it's obvious they are not on wheels. At least the 15-ton AC unit is not on wheels, is on a pallet. I can't really give you much more information than that. I don't really know much more than that. Is Joe Hill on? Paul, is Joe on? Do you know?
I don't see him on the list, and I don't know if Brittany has anybody in the waiting room.
And so are these going to be rental equipment, which is going to be brought to and from the property, or is it going to be there for sale?
No, no sales at all rental. No, and it won't be used on site. So it'll be taken out like the generator, the same principle. They would be removed and taken out for use. They're not going to be used on site.
It's for temporary use at some other location.
Right.
Whether it's a hospital, a school, or a temporary facility for construction or whatnot, but it's definitely going to be off-site.
And do we know, what the maximum dimensions of the equipment is going to be? Because I mean, I would think that if those things might be, I don't know, difficult to transport. I mean, I don't know, maybe you get some kind of a truck with a crane arm on it to put it on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have, and there are going to be delivery trucks on site. I'm sure they've got trucks set up, flatbed type trucks set up with a hoist or a lift or a dismounting forklift that would pick it up and put it in place where it has to go.
Now, are you suggesting, are there going to be associated ductwork?
No.
Associated with this that also might be kept on the property as opposed to in the building? I mean,
No.
there's a difference between a piece of equipment and
Right.
all the accessories that it might need to connect to the structure where it's going to be used.
No, I don't anticipate ductwork on it, no. I mean, you can see it's just a big square box of a piece of equipment.
Well, I can
All the
see-
other work is done offsite.
I can see that, but essentially you'd like to use the outdoors as storage. We're trying to get a handle on exactly what will and what will not be, asked for to be left outside. I don't think that, there are typically with things like that, perhaps flexible ductwork or other types of things associated with it. And, my question goes to, is there anything that we're not seeing that may wind up being stored outside at this site?
No, and in fact, if you wanted to limit it to the items that are on the site plan, that would be fine, because that's what we've presented to you, and that, we expect you to rely on this, so.
Okay.
It would be wrong for us to put something else there that you didn't see. So this is what we're proposing to be stored there, and only this.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see another Mr.
No.
Chimney.
No, of course not. You could put all of those qualifying conditions into a resolution.
Yeah, for example, one of the things that I'd like to see is more, you take a look, for example, on 120 kW diesel generator that you have there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that.
I can give you that dimension now. I found it.
Yeah, I did too. It's 202
Right.
inches long, 83, 89 high.
Yep.
And 9,784 pounds, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Sunbelt has a big, they have, I didn't realize that they're not familiar with them, but they seem to have, they've got all of this equipment and they have their dimensions on them. I'd like to see that because I think these are large units. I mean, 10,000 pounds a piece. Are these run by gas or by diesel, I guess, and some with, any of
these generators are all diesel.
All diesel.
What's on the plan? Just reading the plan. It says diesel. Diesel, diesel air, diesel generator, diesel generator. Diesel air compressor.
Could you provide us with the dimensions and the weights on these? Unless other board members don't.
Could we or did we? I don't, other than what's on here, no. But if you want them, we'll get them.
Yeah, I would like.
Yes, we can do that.
As far as the testing goes and when they're tested, et cetera, outside of it and they started up, how often will that take place with each one? Is there a formula they have for that, I imagine?
I suspect that there is a formula that they have. Dominic, you have a sense on that?
Yeah, I think what'll happen is when they're tested, they'll be tested probably inside the building, should they require any additional maintenance. And then once they'll be cleared, they'll be put out to the yard. And to the question that was asked before about transportation, they have these specialized carriers, and there's enough room on the site for the carrier to pull in. The unit will be loaded either by forklift or by possibly a little ramp, and then taken to the job site. So as far as them actually running on the property, they will be minimal. I should say the time will be minimal. And I think it would be primarily just to make sure it starts. So when it gets to the job site, it's functional.
And that would be inside in the building, it would be started?
Depending, sir. I can't speak to that specifically. The smaller ones, I would say, but the larger ones, again, what they're in for maintenance for is going to be very arbitrary. And I think they're
We're
quite
on the-
muffled, so I'm not so sure noise would be that much of a factor.
Gotcha. What about you said the carrier there'll be room for the carrier. Where on the plan? I don't see that. I'm sorry. If you could direct me to that on the plan.
Yeah, so if you take a look at the lower left parking area,
Yeah.
right, you see we show delivery trucks. See them there? It shows 5 delivery trucks.
The lower left. 2-story.
You got it?
No, I'm embarrassed to tell you. Oh, delivery trucks. I'm sorry. There are 5 delivery trucks there.
That's correct.
They don't look like they're big enough to carry some of the equipment.
I mean, they're just, you know, for illustration. I mean, you could see the size of the spaces. Those are big enough for a, you know, pretty long truck there. These are just, you know.
Will you
yeah,
be storing?
it's a site that could hold up to 178 cars.
Yeah.
Which were offloaded on the streets, which we're now not going to do. So it's a pretty big site, and this is obviously fewer pieces of equipment. But yeah, I mean, they would make, you know, the max they could have is 104. That doesn't mean they're going to have 104. That's just the max they can have. So they would have to make room because all of the, you know, onloading and offloading is done on site, not in the street. So,
But the unloading and
Will there
offloading,
be diesel fuel on the site?
yes, there will be a fuel tank on site. It'll be above ground. Probably a 500 gallon or depending, a dual wall diesel fuel tank.
And where will that be? Is that on the plan?
That'll be on a concrete pad.
It's not on the plan, but it will be located somewhere that meets NFPA standards. And of course, it's going to require a building permit.
That'll be a separate approval.
Yeah.
On the village.
Yeah.
So they may tell us where to put it.
Yeah.
And I think one point.
It's going to be a permanently positioned on the lot?
No, I mean, permanent, you know, it's above ground on a concrete pad.
What I meant was, it's stationary for your operations. I'm not saying it's.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes, stationary, yes.
So why are we looking at this? Why did you not put it on the site plan that you gave to us? This is news.
Because we're not sure where the village is going to tell us to put it. We're gonna have to put it where they direct us to put it.
Well, but for the area, but for a variance purpose, that's something we would want to know. I would think that there's going to be fuel involved, where it's going to be, how many
Oh,
gallons.
yeah, there's definitely fuel involved, which, you know, we've told you, would you want us to identify on the site plan exactly where the tank will go? Because it's just on a concrete pad, but, you know, we certainly could do that. If you want.
Well, the size of it.
I said maximum of 1,000 gallon tank. No more than 1,000 gallons. I mean, I suspect it'd probably be probably closer to the building, I guess. Right? You tell me, Joe or Dominic, do you have any sense of where it might go?
I think it would probably be somewhere along the rear property line so that it doesn't get in the way of any moving vehicles. And it would probably be close to the building. So the units could either be fueled going into the building.
So let me give you, for instance, there's on the plan, there's a concrete pad, which is on the back side of the property where it says behind employee parking.
Right.
Just to the left of the building. So that pad could very well be where the gas is.
All right, but you'll let us know where. Okay.
Right.
Are there any other
there is a
improvements?
concrete pad marked on the plan. That's
Okay, are there any other improvements to the lot that you're thinking of adding that are not on the site plan?
No, I think the only, I think at
Any
the
other
last meeting,
cranes or anything else that's going to be positioned on a long-term basis?
no, other than we agreed at the last meeting, I think Andy Spatz had asked his father, wanted us to put up a fence along the back. And we said we would do that to protect his property. But no, there are no, the site's already, went through a vigorous site plan about 10 years ago. So there is already, islands and, landscaping, in and around the site. They put in a sidewalk. So the answer to your question is no, there is no additional improvements to the site.
And how many employees will be working every day?
How many people will be working there?
Yeah.
I'm not even
It'll probably between 6 and 10 people.
And this is. Six to 10 people. Okay. Will there be someone there at night to oversee? Oh, this is.
No, they will have normal business hours. They might have a short day on Saturday. And then in the evening, when the yard is closed, it's fully gated, and there are overhead lights to keep it illuminated, similar to what you would see in a shopping center in the evening. So the property will be secured and lit in the evenings.
The lights
Are those lights existing?
The lights exist now.
Yes, everything is there now. This was.
So you're making no changes to the lighting that's there?
We're making actually no changes to the lighting, and we are going to be upgrading the building. The building will see new windows, new doors, new painting, maybe even a whole new facade, because we would like to make this. And actually, just to backtrack a moment about Sunbelt. Sunbelt is a national corporation, and the one thing they pride themselves on more than anything else is safety. So anything that they're going to do on this property will be done to the maximum level of safety that could be employed. So we're quite confident we know they run a great operation, and we're quite confident they will operate very, very professionally, cleanly, and more importantly, legally on that site. And the owners have every intention to upgrade it because we want to help the neighborhood, and we bringing in a national corporation. They really like good looking stuff, and they're looking forward to coming to Mamaroneck, and we want to welcome them.
Yeah, that's okay.
I have
Looks
two
like they've got several hundred
things to
locations.
ask. Chair, please, if
Yeah,
I may. Two
Please.
things. One, are we specifying where employee parking is located on the
Yes,
site plan?
yes, it's designated in the area close to where that concrete pad is that we pointed out, as well as on the 532 site, which is on the opposite side of the building. So there's ample parking for customers and employees.
Great. And the second thing is, when there is a emergency, not flooding in our village, but a hurricane, there's poles down, and there's an evening demand for the generators, will the yard be open and the
Yes.
generator be moved out of there during the time to aid a hospital and so forth? So after hours of what your normal operation hours, will there be somebody to staff to remove those generators, within 24 hours?
I would think so, because that's their business. They need to get these units out to wherever they're required as quickly as possible.
Right. They can't be moved unless an employee is there. So it's not.
Oh,
like
yeah,
people-
somebody will have to be there to
someone
open up
be
and
there, yeah.
start them and drive the trucks.
Exactly. So I was kind of expanding on, you're saying your hours of operation, 9 to 5, that if there is an emergency and there's a need for it, that the yard will be open so that those employees can gain access and remove those generators and get them to where they need to go. I just wanted to, make that note for the board so they're aware of that.
Yeah.
As for sound, in my professional experience, larger generators are equipped with sound dampening walls. They wouldn't be as loud as your typical, contractor generator on the side of the road as he's using buzz saws to do demo work. You should look at the I'm mentioning to look at the specifications of those things to better aid you in your decision. Thank you.
Hey, board members have any questions? Anyone here who's not on the board, any members of the public have any inquiries?
I have one question. You had mentioned a fence that you had proposed after talking with Mr. Spatz.
No, he came to your last meeting and said he would like a fence. And we said we would do that. I mean, the board could make it a condition of approval, but we agreed to do it. We didn't put it on the plan because we haven't done it, or, but he said if this were approved, he would like a fence. So we said, okay.
The board might be interested in fence specifications, considering it is an area variance or a variance for outside storage, and that would potentially have a mitigating impact on any visual impacts. So you might want specifications on what type of fence, if that is what is being proposed.
Well, also the location of the fence. I don't really think that there's much of a view from the back of the property.
That's where it'll be. That's where it'll be.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they asked for. Like all applicants, when neighbors ask for certain things, for the most part, if it's reasonable, we'll do it. In fact, the board could specify what kind of fence you want. It obviously will not require a variance. It's not going to be, it'll be within the code. You could require fencing along the back per, our offer.
Why do you think they requested the fencing?
Why?
Yeah.
I have no idea, because it's not like they have a great view in the back there, and I don't know.
It's already screened with trees.
Listen, I know as you know, I know the Spats as well. I was a little surprised and caught by surprise by it, so I don't know.
Is there an elevation difference between the lot there where you're going to have things and Railroad Way or the Spatz's property?
Yes, there is. And I frankly don't remember what that elevation difference is, but it's greater than 4 feet, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember, Dominic?
Yeah, I would say it's maybe closer to 6 or 8 feet, Joe.
Right,
When we
right.
put the wall in, remember we built that long stone wall?
Yeah.
It's about that height.
Yeah.
Because
But-
the site originally was sloped down to Railroad Avenue.
Yeah.
When the Milos took over the property, we graded it to grade to meet Waverly Avenue, and that required the construction of the rear retaining wall.
Right.
And we did that the whole length of the site.
Okay, so nobody is getting anything in or out through that side of the property.
Absolutely
No.
not. Absolutely not.
Not without, I heard somebody mention a helicopter before, not without a helicopter.
So are you gonna, oh, Charlie, do they need site plan approval on this?
I don't know, have you guys talked with the building department on
Yeah,
that?
no. So far, no, because we're not doing anything. It's already, it's a lot that we've, there used to be a lot for storage of cars. So we're not building anything. We're not doing anything different. So far, the answer is no, we don't need site plan approval.
It is an unlisted action. Do we have to decide what we're doing about it in terms of environmental assessment?
Sure, it's an unlisted action. And Dennis, I don't know if you have any thoughts on them requiring site plan approval or not. But you can do an uncoordinated review. And so you would do your own SECRA analysis on the variance request. You would have to run through part 2 of the EAF and then a negative declaration if you deem it appropriate. You do also have the ability to require a coordinated review, which would mean you would do the environmental review for all the other involved agencies.
Thank you.
Point on, yes. Yeah, that we have a lot to do as the building department for this property. The usage interior and all throughout the property.
So what's this?
We're all aware of what we are going to need to do moving forward if the board accepts it.
Well, I think we're gonna need, how do the members feel? I think we need a plan to indicate like where the fuel will be, the fuel tanks,
Well,
I'd
it's
like-
one tank. Do you want us to,
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the size on all of the equipment there because.
Right.
this
yeah,
is
I'm
very
making
low.
notes of the things you'd like. So you want the dimensions of the generators and the AC equipment. You'd like to know who manufactures them, the weight of these equipment, and the location of the fuel tank, right?
Yeah, and the dehumidifier, because I guess that's not a generator.
Yeah, I had the AC equipment, yeah. So,
Are these trucks that they have here for this, the five bays there, are those owned by the lessee, or is that the lessor, or is, I'm sorry, the lessee, or is that, do they deliver and pick up, or how does that work?
All of the equipment is owned, managed, and maintained by Sunbelt.
No, but I'm talking about the delivery, I'm sorry.
the delivery of the generators back and forth to the
Yes, yeah,
location.
you mentioned the trucks would be there for that, and I want to know, are those your trucks? Your
Yes.
Well,
tanks?
they're Sunbelt's trucks.
They're all Sunbelt's trucks. They
Oh,
pick up
okay.
and deliver their own equipment. I think that was your question.
Right, that is my question, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, does anyone else want anything? Is there anything else anyone else would like on this? I would like to, do you have any, I'm curious about how much noise in terms of how much the testing it takes place, et cetera, but does anyone else have any questions of that type or not?
I do, as the building department. So later on, we're gonna want to know where, the waste fuel is being stored. The dumpster enclosure, if it's going to be located inside the same dumpster enclosure, clearances as well. So if they wanted to add that to the site plan, so it could be reviewed by the board at the same time.
I'm sorry, Dennis, I'm having trouble hearing you. You said dumpster enclosure, what else?
Dumpster enclosure, waste.
Fuel tank.
I got
Sorry.
fuel tank from Dave and everyone else's questions. Was there something else other than the dumpster enclosure Dennis wanted?
Yeah, the waste fuel. So the suspended fuel that's being dismissed from those items and the replacement fuel. So all of your oil where it will be stored if it's not within the structure. And
Okay.
the waste fuel. That's it.
Okay.
Just those clearances. So it's all on the site plan and you guys are complete.
And your parking on site is up, I guess you have that on the side there.
Yes.
Does that match the number of parking you need for employees and customers?
More than enough.
I think we have more than enough. Yeah.
Okay, so what is
So-
enough? What is required, so I know what enough is?
It's shown on the plan, the upper left side of the plan. We've got a table listing there.
Okay, gotcha.
36,
Thank
I think, is required. And we have,
you. 18?
we don't need a parking zone.
No, but you don't show 36, do you? 3, 6, 9, 10, 13, 15, 18, 19, I count.
What is it that you're asking?
So
I counted.
On the schedule, Joe, we have,
Right.
we have 34 standard and 2 handicap spaces on the plan.
Right, those are on 532.
On the right side.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm counting, when I look at that, I'm counting much less. You have them there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Count them. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9,
6,
10,
7,
11.
8, 9. Well, because
19.
I think some of the spaces are empty. They don't have the cars in them, right? Is that?
yeah. So if you,
Well, then what you do is, oh, I see what you're saying. All right, so then, all
the
right.
numbers with the circles around them are
I'm with you.
the count.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. My other question is on the trucks, the size of them. Could you, if you could just get a sense of what size they are, because it could be very deceptive. It may be much larger.
We'll get something that's more true to scale.
Thank you. Anyone else want anything?
Just wanted to revisit the site plan question. Dennis, has the
Please.
building department determined yet whether a site plan approval is needed for this? Because the code does require a change in the use or a change in the intensity of the use requires site plan approval.
Right.
I don't have the determination letter in front of me with what Frank stated, so I.
No, I
cannot
mean,
tell you
the
what was-
original determination letter, no, did not require a site plan, but, you know,
That's surprising.
obviously, if we have to go
Check
get
with-
site plan, we'll go to site, I mean, things change.
I'm with-
So if we
with
have to
you.
go,
It's-
well,
Could be
Okay.
also-
It's a change of use, and you also have a lot more people working. It's not a passive parking cars. You're doing quite a lot to this equipment.
Right, but they're asking for an area variance, not a use variance.
right, and
That's
the
what
use.
they're asking for. We have to decide
Yeah,
what.
we haven't made that determination yet.
No,
Yes,
know.
correct. That's correct. But the
I know.
use is actually, remember, this was a lot that held 178 cars that were being offloaded and unloaded constantly. This is a less intense use because this equipment will not be offloaded as often, and it'll be fewer. There are fewer pieces on the property, and there'll be fewer people working here because remember, the car dealerships had leased this lot to move inventory and to store inventory. So that was a lot more active use than what we're proposing. So we're not actually, as you know, of course, we want to be careful when we have this conversation about use, but we're not really changing the use, but we are changing the operation. And so that may entail a site plan visit. I don't know, but we're not making any changes. to
It
the
was used
site.
for off-street parking before, and now you're using it for storage. Is that
Correct.
Changing use.
But we used it for storage of cars before. But anyway,
have a term
it's up
called
to the village. I mean, we'll do whatever we're told to do. So if the village says you have to get site plan, we'll go get site plan. You know that. So we'll have that conversation with the building department and see what they say. But
Well, we could.
we do what we're
assuming-
told, as you know. We do what we're told. If we have to go get a site
Right,
plan.
I'm just saying, we could require, it could be the board could, if it granted a variance, make a condition upon the site plan, correct?
Yes, you could. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what the
I
planning
understand.
board would do with it because it's already done. But yes, we can go to them and have that conversation, of course. But I would hope then that your secret determination would be binding on them. Or not.
So that would.
We do it for this, and then we have to start over again at the planning board.
That would probably be information we need, because if you want the secret determination to be binding on the planning board, they would have to do a coordinated review.
Right, and we want to sort of get this resolved sooner rather than later. So we would accept that you did a secret determination for the variance only. And then if we go to planning, we'll go to planning and deal with it there, because we'll deal with it. So
All right.
you can do your own secret determination, and that's
When
fine.
will you get this? You can have this for the next meeting, you think?
Oh, yes, we'll get it to you next week.
Okay. Not this week, huh?
It's only,
Yeah, okay.
we'll try. We'll be working on it tomorrow, I can assure you. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything else they want? So we can be done with this thing then? Okay, so we'll put it on for next month. Brian, anything? Matt?
Yes. Thank you.
No, I think the last time we met on this, we did ask a lot of questions about what was going to go on in the building and where the maintenance was going to take place and how they're going to handle the oil. And I've heard a lot of the same things come up tonight. So I hope that we actually get that.
Well, I thought that the letter that we gave you from Sunbelt was addressed the questions we got last time. You've had more questions this time, so we'll get you those answers.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much.
Yep. Have a good night.
Good night. All right. We have two, let's see, I haven't seen the latest agenda, but the one I followed and originally, we have two lead agency issues, I believe.
I think we have one closed application.
We have one call, yeah, the donuts. That's the one you're referring to?
Yeah. I think that's listed on the agenda before the notices.
Super, all right. Yeah. Never understood that when Robin would say the agenda changed, and I said, now I understand it. Never understood that. When the agenda changed. Now I understand. I guess as it's being prepared and typed, it gets juggled around, but, okay, so let's just pull my agenda up here and okay, so we have ducks, right? Isn't that, what's the name of that?
It's 805 Mamaroneck Avenue.
Yeah, hang on one second. I'm sorry, I don't have that. I was doing this last night. Okay, Duck's Donut closed at 805 Mamaroneck Avenue. Okay. Anybody want to address this on deliberations? Meg?
I don't think we've gotten any complaints. It came in a timely fashion for this special permit. I originally did not approve the special permit. I'm concerned when hopefully one day we get past pandemic conditions and all those buildings are filled. I have real concerns about the parking, but I understand the will of the board was to grant this special permit. And so I can't see any reason not to renew the special permit if I'm lining up, agreeing with the voice of the board in the past. What I would like to raise, though, again, is something similar to what I said about the Smashburger renewal, is that I don't know what a donut shop is. It's not a defined term in the code. It's not one of the food establishments. It's not something that says it needs a special permit, and yet we're giving a special permit. So in a similar manner to Smashburger, I looked through the food establishment definitions, definitely think that the carryout restaurant matches the operation. There's nothing in contradiction to that definition in the building, the model of this food establishment. So if we could possibly renew this special permit, if others feel it should be renewed, if we are going to renew it, but call out that to align with the code, it's a carryout restaurant with some of the text, Charlie, that you included for the one in Smashburger, which says this is no way an indication that the operations have changed. It's simply calling out that we're finding a relevant term in the code.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right.
I agree with Meg. I think we have no grounds to not renew it. And yeah, I think it's if you look at the definitions, it's more closely aligned with being a carryout. So let's do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think also bearing in mind that it already has a permit, so it has some vested interest. It's just a renewal. I'm sorry, Brian?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Meg, and it really does seem to fit the definition of carry out. And again, it was in business. There's no complaints. It had a permit. It's also going through some tough times right now, having been flooded out, and I certainly wouldn't want to add to their woes. It was a decent business, so yeah, I'd have no problem with it.
Are we make this again a termed special permit, or what? Because I think, what was the length of term of the original special?
1 second, I had that here. Let me go.
Yeah, I'd have to fish probably 3.
Yeah, maybe not.
I just can't believe 3 years went by so fast.
Yeah,
3 years.
You get younger. See, Meg, that's it. Everything goes.
Oh my gosh.
I don't, you know what it was last year? I don't seem to see special permit notification. Oh, after a 3-year, for renewal, the applicant is required to apply for a 3-year.
But they were really timely. That's why it seems less than 3 years, because usually applicants do it 3 years plus, but they took.
It was granted on March 17. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. March 7th, 2000.
We're in December now, so they're like 3 months early, I guess.
Well, that's because it says no less than 4 months prior to the.
Right, so they actually complied.
They did.
So we said they required to apply for the renewal after a probationary period of 3 years. Do we make this probationary or we make it permanent?
I think we could make it permanent as long as the correct language is in there, that any changes in the operations or increased volumes of, intensity of use, they would need to return to amend the special permit.
Joe,
I
you want to
agree.
share?
I mean, during their probationary period, not a single issue has come up, so.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's only if they radically changed how they wanted to operate that we would need to see it again if they were going to add alcohol and be open late at night or something. I'm just imagining that they have a
That
different.
would be some kind of donut.
It would be. It would be.
Yeah, their board, that's exactly what's gonna happen. They're gonna have a new series of donuts this whole year. So
I have to say, I give all food establishments. I give all food establishments. I'm sorry.
Very diligent on doing the right thing ahead of time. So
Yeah. And I give all food establishments credit, like first through pandemic, then those that got flooded out. It's a grind.
I can add the same language we've been
if they're
using.
going, they will probably not have stores open until mid-February if everything moves very smooth. So mid-February, they'll probably open again just in time for their special permit to expire.
Okay, should we vote on that then, or?
Sure, if you want to make a motion on that, or do you want to wait for the resolution? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think we should get the resolution. I mean.
Okay,
That's good. Good job.
we can do that, wait for that. We have 3 choices, right? We can wait for that, we can vote in final, or we can vote and not do that, because as Charlie and I had discussed recently, we bumped into about 3 or 4 cases where the courts have decided it. One at my office, which we were shocked with, where boards were making decisions without the findings and without the decision. Then after the commencement of Article 78, on the grounds that they didn't do it, they then did it. At which point, the courts have held, the second department has held repeatedly that about 2 or 3 times. Well, that's nice. They cured it. That's great. Otherwise, we would have had to remit it. We're glad they did. You scratch your head on that one, but it's very unusual. I don't know. It's kind of telling someone.
I think we wait for the resolution ourselves.
No, I agree with you. There's no rush here. There's no need not to. That's fine.
Right, they're not open. Let's just get the language right, especially the
Yeah,
language.
no, I agree with you. I'm just commenting on that because we were very taken aback. I know.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very odd, very odd indeed. All right. All right, so
I have a question for Charlie, if you don't mind, Chair.
I'm sorry?
So if we're waiting, I have a question for Charlie. If we're waiting for the resolution on this applicant, then moving forward for consistency, we'll be waiting on the resolution for everyone. Moving forward, or is it just the circumstance? Because this is a learning curve for me, so I'm just trying to.
This is what we've been doing. We've instituted this waiting for the resolution on the majority of our applications, Dennis. This is what we generally do.
We generally do it, but unless there are issues where it's a very simple, if there's a very simple thing with 1 or 2 conditions, we haven't, but it really depends. I mean, I don't think we're bound to either one. We have instances where somebody needs something immediately and there's very little in the way of conditions. I would say that if this applicant was going to close unless we'll be not able to operate, which is not the case, we might very well do it the other way. Yeah,
Just
I
right,
don't think there's an issue here.
When I have the applicants come to me, I just want to make sure that I can word everything appropriately to keep them on track and not mislead them. So that's where that's coming from. And, there's a lot of special permits that are expired right now across the board everywhere. And I'm trying to get each one prior to that expiration, within 6 months, 5 months to apply again, even if it's a temporary, so I just want to try to eliminate the expiration on these things.
Well, see, now I think what we can say here is, we're distinguishing this one a little bit because we're not simply renewing it. If we were just renewing the language, we could look at the old one and we could say, yeah, okay. we're going to go with it. But here, we're actually trying to do something that will help the applicant and you as well, in the fact that making it a non-expiring special permit. So I just want to make sure we get the language right on that. And with this one, we're not in a rush. So
I've advised the applicant that you would deliberate this evening. You would likely have me prepare a draft resolution for approval in January.
All right. For voting in January.
Yep.
Because otherwise you're going to be the one that takes the heat in case something.
Yeah,
comes
you
up.
got that right. That's all right. I take
Okay,
a
well,
lot.
we have your cell number, we have your address. We'll tell them to come see you. It's not a problem.
We appropriately ask applicants, we appropriately ask that people come 4 months in advance. So it should, like, if adhering to that, it should be very rare that it would ever hold them up.
Okay. Okay, so we have 2 remaining items, I think, and you have notice of lead agency where the planning board wants to be lead agency. And one is on 572 Variance. I don't know that much about other than was it a 10-unit residential mid-rise and parking?
Well, they submitted their entire application to the planning board. If you go to the agenda of the planning board of September 22nd,
Right.
The site plan and all of the information for what they're requesting.
All right. So
Charlie, I had asked you a question, like, what are our options? We have this notice of intent, and I see on the back page, it says, do you object or not? And I would like to know what the options are for the board when we're faced with something like this.
Sure, your options are to consent to the planning board being the lead agency and not issue any comments at all. You could consent to the planning board being lead agency and issue comments. And I think Ashley from AKRF has been drafting your comments. You could also object to the planning board being the lead agency and then take on the role of being lead agency yourself. However, when there is a lead agency dispute, that dispute comes up to Albany, actually, to the Department of Environmental Conservation for resolution. There's 3 factors that the DEC weighs on determining who should be the lead agency. And what it comes down to is basically the agency, here would be the planning board of the ZBA, that has the most control over the environmental aspects of the project. Typically, that comes under site plan review with the planning board, because the planning board is the one who looks at stormwater impacts, stormwater capacity, all those types of environmentally related issues. So those are your options.
It's an unlisted action, though. Don't we have isn't there the option of it being an uncoordinated review and we can each do our own?
So the planning board they received the application first and they commenced a coordinated review. So that means that
It's switched from being unlisted, because when I saw it listed on the agenda, it said unlisted.
Well, it's still unlisted, coordinated review, which means now it is under an umbrella of a coordinated review as opposed to an uncoordinated review. If it was an uncoordinated review, each agency would do its own secret determination. But because it's now coordinated, one of the involved agencies will do the secret review for the entire project.
what are the variances that what's the zoning boards as an involved agency? What exactly, or do you know what the approvals?
Well, this application, Dave, has, I'm not sure how you're supposed to move forward on it because the notice of determination is incorrectly states that it's in the TOD and a C1, and it's not. It's in an RM3 residential district. And it opened on the agenda on the planning board. The public review was to consider the special permit because multi-residential in the TOD required a special permit. But that was incorrect here because this one is located in an RM3, at which as of right, you can build a multi-residential. You just have to comply with the different zoning requirements.
But do we have a role in terms of from approval standpoint? Are there variances that we will have?
Yes, there's variances. They want to build additional apartments for the size of the lot. It's an undersized lot. It's an undersized frontage. They don't have the minimum parking requirements. They have an additional floor. I believe their FAR is a little over. It's, you know, they're asking for an FAR variance, and also the height is slightly, they need a slight height variance.
So Charlie, let me see if I'm correct also. I think that we don't have to consent because by not objecting, it's the objection that does it. Non-objection is a default approval, right?
So
If we don't consent, we have a certain period of time and we don't consent, we do nothing, then the lead agency goes to the party who purports to want it, right, in this case?
correct.
Okay, the second question is, in any event, to the extent we don't want to be the lead agency, if that's the case, then under those circumstances, we do have, and it's a quasi obligation, the way the rules write it, to actually comment and provide them with things like Meg did, and provide them with possibly a letter. So maybe if you have points, it was to tell the lead agency, listen, you know, we're not going to fight you over that, but let us point out some things to you that you need to consider and be attentive to, and that we want addressed. That I think is important, but I don't see that happening enough. And I think that, you know, maybe the way to do this is for some one or two to basically come back to the board at the next meeting with, here's the things you'd like to write up, and then we can say, fine, then the board can have that letter sent over and all of the points addressed. First, the first thing is if we want to be a lead agency, which no comment. I mean, that's up to us, but I don't know. It seems to me primarily planning is generally doing these, and this is probably, but I don't know. What's the feeling of the board? Is there anyone here who wants to we divide it up?
I think it's unfortunate that it changed to a coordinated action and that we couldn't, both boards couldn't be. This is a highly, this area is prone to flooding. It had huge flooding. It's a dangerous area in that sense to be residential, unless you're very, very careful about it. I think it would have been wise to have the input from both boards to really, you know, do a thorough review rather than one taking the lead and we're adding comments, but they could be considered, not considered. So I think it's unfortunate that we're not both doing environmental review of such a very important.
Well, if I just
That's the burden. The idea is not to do, is to coordinate because of the burden that places, but it's supposed to be done with our involvement and input, including, and we can comment on PEIS if that's where it goes. We'll argue why they should pause decade, the points you make. You know, I think that from the applicant standpoint, the whole purpose of lead agency concept historically has been to avoid putting an applicant through, oh, this board thinks it's great and there's no environmental problem. This board says, oh my God, here's what I've got to do. And that was what, I guess in late 70s, that's what initiated the whole concept.
So a coordinated review is the most comprehensive environmental review you can do. Of course, you could do the EIS, which you guys know, but it allows the lead agency to consider the environmental impacts of all the applications, the site plan, the area variances, the flood permit, as opposed to the planning board just focusing on site plan, the zoning board just focusing on the area variances.
Is that what happens in an uncoordinated review?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Thank you.
Did you say uncoordinated or coordinated?
So if it's an uncoordinated review, this board would only be allowed to look at the environmental impacts of the area variances being requested.
Right.
I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, I get the idea that they're sort of divided what the focus would be. But for instance, something like a floodplain development, that's not given. Variances are given by the planning board, but that comes from some other place. Which board then would review whether or not they've complied with that, or the information has come through, they're satisfied with meeting the requirements of the floodplain development permit? Something that's a site plan and not a area variance.
They would, the planning board as involved as the lead agency would look at the environmental impacts associated with the floodplain development permit.
Yes, but I'm just asking hypothetically, if it was an uncoordinated review, you were saying planning board would do site plan impact and the zoning board would do area variance impact, but there are others. There's MDL, there is stormwater, there is the floodplain permit. Wouldn't both boards be able to review those?
So it gets tricky. So those types of permits, if you're doing an uncoordinated review, they may fall under non-discretionary approvals, meaning if you meet the requirements, the permit is issued, like a building permit. And SECRA actually doesn't apply to non-discretionary approvals. For instance, building permits. If you meet the New York State Building Code, you get a building permit. There's no kind of discretion involved. And so SECRA doesn't apply. But if they do the coordinated review, they're allowed to study all of the impacts.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you. I didn't understand that. It's very helpful.
So do you want to put together something? Do you want to put an outline together that we can consider at the next meeting or before the next meeting?
I think Ashley from AKRF has been doing that.
But we haven't made any comments.
I'm sorry?
She took, I think Ashley took your comments from the first meeting that we discussed this
Are
afternoon.
you talking about 715 Washington then, not Van Rance? I thought we were right now, we're talking about Van Rance, and our board has never talked about Van Rance.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I got the applications.
Right. So maybe,
Yeah, that would be the time.
I mean, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, I'm trying to focus on, I think we could divide this up a little bit. If Meg, you have a lot of, if you want to start this and then maybe circulate.
Sure.
Well, we
then-
need the materials. We haven't been given any materials. I know that they exist on the planning board's site for September 22nd, but that's not really us getting the materials directly or the most up-to-date materials.
Or getting hard
They don't
copies
even-
if
they
somebody
even
wanted a
have-
hard copy.
Yeah, I looked, I couldn't even find the full form EAF. Have they done any of that, Charlie?
They would have, so they have to have the EAF, the application, and a concept plan in order to be able to circulate for lead agency. They
Have
don't
they
have
done
to
that?
have all of the environmental studies. They don't have to have, they
Okay.
just need those 3 items.
We have not gotten that, right?
I believe they circulated it to the board in their notice of intent letter.
I didn't see.
I
any-
didn't see it and I looked for it
I
on,
just saw a letter.
It's
didn't
not
see
on,
it.
it's not on Novus.
not on Novus. I looked for it too. There, I looked for it under that.
And
So
I-
then
and we didn't
we'll-
get hard copies.
What would be appropriate is to identify to the lead agency that we have not, so I see we have the intent letter, an EAF, I see attached to the intent letter. and
That's it.
So we should have the application form and the concept plan at the very least.
And it's
Why
an
don't you-
SEAF, so.
No, as counsel, why don't you contact them and tell them that we're going to respond to their notice and we would like this so we can provide them with comment
Yep, that's no
at the
problem.
earliest, before they take any action.
Yep. Luckily, the planning board attorney is the office right next to me.
There you go. Just lock them in or lock her in until you get that. That's all.
Yep, I can do that.
That would appreciate
So
that.
then, Dave, once we
We can
get
make a motion on that too, Brian. What about now, Meg, do you want to, I mean, I guess,
well,
I'm trying to find a way to do this so that 4 people don't, because I know what happens. A committee of 4 ends up having, everyone does 5.
I'm very happy to be a clearinghouse. I'm sure that everyone here is going to do an extensive review and have
I don't know.
comments. I could be a clearinghouse to just see if we seem to be repeating ourselves so that we could kind of maybe get it into a list that.
So Charlie's going to get us those materials. Why don't you then take a look at them? We all will, but then if you want to circulate or highlight points that we can then discuss at the next meeting.
Okay, or
you're done.
does anybody want to also send theirs in and we can kind of try to get organized so that.
Sure, but yeah.
Like if it's about flooding, we have them all categorized. So it's not like I bring up all mine and then Brian brings up all his and then they kind of match, but they don't quite match. If we could have, sort of comprehensively organize them so that we have a better discussion next time.
But as Brian said, we don't have the antecedent. We don't have the predicate on which it's based. Am I right, Brian? I mean, I don't know what the proposal is.
Right. I mean, you know,
I mean, it's nice to comment. I could write a lot of.
well, listen, the materials are on the planning board agenda for September 22nd, or at least the materials at that time that they had provided. And that's why Meg has a lot of insight into this, and kudos to her for actually digging it up, because she's the one who found that it wasn't in the TOD zone. And, you know, therefore, actually, I thought that based on that, we were supposed to be waiting for perhaps Dennis to tell us what variances they're going to need if they come through our board. Because
No,
I think that the building, yeah, the building
that should be
department
on
has
their
to.
application, and that should be on their request and on the coordinated review, because that's why they would give us, as an involved agency, the materials. If we hadn't known, we wouldn't get anything.
What was very interesting is that I looked at the cover letter of the applicant sent in, and they correctly identified the lot as being in the RM3 and correctly identified a number of variances that they needed, such as the open to the sky, the open air per apartment variance. And then that didn't show up on the letter of determination. So the applicant was not in any way trying to go in a different direction. It's a little odd.
So just to follow up with what you asked me, David, I think that, you know, based on that, yeah, we need the materials. We need to look at the materials, but we should also be looking at this with an eye towards what types of variances we are going to need to provide specifically, and what information we'll need to, you know, to that end, because
I guess so, but I think they have the obligation initially, because otherwise you can't even do a coordinated review, because the coordinated review is predicated upon who will be acting upon this. So you'll need these variances, so we pick you. So they should indicate that in their summary, in their initial summary, what they need, right?
But
I mean, isn't that?
sorry, can't we could
yes,
supply comments.
it went sideways.
I realize it.
But Charlie, can't we can only send comments about the area variances, or can we send comments about the entire application, and then the lead agency will do what they want with those comments? But we could address things like the fuel cell system is on the ground floor and is not elevated above floodplain.
You can send any
I mean,
comment.
that's, sorry?
You can send any comment you want.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're not limited to things that within our jurisdiction on a coordinated review. So we could comment on, say, for areas that are variances, these are important factors that should be addressed, but then you can mention 5 or 6 others. Right. Sure knows.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we try to
I was just thinking that if we get organized in the groupings of the comments so that we're not all just repeating ourselves, or, you know, I'm sure we're going to find a lot of the same factors.
And it's also, it's not critical that you know all the area variances that are going to be needed at this time to make your comments. You know, a lot of times as applications go through the process, you find maybe more variances are needed. So that's why kind of the holistic approach to your comments is appropriate.
If it's helpful, I have access to the September items that were submitted to planning. I have folders on that. I don't know if you want me to circulate.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
Should we have
items
prior to September? What should the process be going forward so that we can more efficiently respond to these new applications in a coordinated fashion?
Sure. So the process should be that whoever gets the application first, or whoever wants to be the lead agency, they make a motion to declare their intent to be the lead agency and to circulate lead agency notice.
To whom? To the whole board?
To all the involved agencies. So involved agencies are those agencies that have discretionary approval authority. Oftentimes it's the ZBA if you need an area variance, it's the Department of Environmental Conservation if you need something from a wetland permit from the DEC, Sometimes it's the county Department of Health if you need a health department or public works approval. And then once that's circulated, it should be circulated with the intent and the application and the plan and the EAF.
Is it circulated to all board members at that time? Or is
Yeah,
it
it should be.
circulated? So we, as all board members, should be getting that at the same time.
Well, it'll go to the board, it would go to Brittany, and then Brittany would circulate it, or whoever the clerk is. And then,
Well,
I think this one came in when there was nobody. So I think that's kind of what happened. I don't think it got circulated properly from my understanding.
Okay.
But I think Greta might also be asking whether or not it's just going to go to the chair.
Yeah, I guess
No,
that's what
it'll
I'm
go-
asking. Thank you, Brian.
no, it should go to all board members.
Okay, that was,
Also, though, who decides if it's an application that needs a site plan review and clearly needs area variances as well? Who decides if it starts at the planning board or if it goes to the ZBA first?
Well,
So really, it's the applicant. However, just because an involved agency does not have an application before it, it does not mean it's not an involved agency. So that is why, I don't think you guys have an area variance application yet before you. But you're still an involved agency.
We do for what? We do for the 715 Mamaroneck, but not for Variance.
although there's a body of law, Charlie, that talks about the concept that some of the judges have been very critical that people go to planning first, and they've been very critical because planning shouldn't get something. We've all, in Mamaroneck, it's always gone to zoning first when the variance is needed, because planning can't go ahead and do anything because it's where they're going to approve something that can't exist because of zoning problems. So there was a good case out of Suffolk and talked about the whole concept of first you go and you get the right to do it. And then you go to planning, what I always say to frame it, to massage it, to put it into the place, because that's less discretionary. If we've given a variance to somebody, it used to always be that way. But they obviously were planning, they wanted this larger project, so they went there figuring we were going to be more of just a variance issue. I don't know. But
yeah, that's like the biggest gray area ever in land use law. And typically what happens, and I'll just only speak from when I represent applicants, it's we go to the planning board for an initial preliminary meeting. We would submit those documents we need to start the secret circulation process.
right.
And then the planning board often says, all right, go to zoning and get your zoning and then come back to planning. The whole goal is to try to avoid the ping pong effect. And so you try to get rid of any major problems planning might have, then you go to zoning, and then you go back to planning, typically is how it's done.
Right. There is
It just seems that in that instance, then it goes to planning first, and they can take if it's unlisted action, and they can determine if they want to be lead agent, and turn it into a coordinated review right there.
Yeah.
Or the first in line, sort of.
That's
well,
correct.
you can oppose it, but usually they have more involvement
Yeah, but
because
I'm just pointing it out. It's just I'm just pointing it out.
Is that something that maybe the consultants could advise as to which board to start with, depending on the certain project? Or it's still up to the applicant on where they'd like to begin? Because just from secretarial, I am told, and usually they are told to start with planning.
well, historically in Mamaroneck, times I've been on the board, that we've always been very critical of anyone who doesn't go to zoning first. And that is because if you don't have a variance, planning really cannot approve anything.
Right.
On the other hand, if we do give them someone a variance, planning can't say you can't do it. They have to say, okay, we have the right to do it. You're supposed to make it fit into this. You may have ideas or suggestions, and planning will do more of the site concept, how the driveways, how the this landscape, they put the whole package together. But we give them an individual who goes to planning, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but an individual goes to planning with a variance. And he says, I got a variance, I can do X square feet and I can do this height. Planning can't say, no, you can't. They have to make it work. They may want to do things, they may want to change some things, but they can't take away the right that that individual has attained, because it's technically an as of right at that point, because the variance renders it as of right. Whereas if you go to planning first and you didn't go to zoning, planning can't say, oh, well, just ignore the zoning code because you'll probably get a variance. So usually when it's a major variance, I think if it's a larger project where the zoning is minimal, goes that way, but I think that planning generally gets involved. We don't do much in the way of positive decks. The only one we've done, my knowledge, is 2 or 3 of them. 20 some odd years, so. By the way, I did find the building department's position on 572 Van Rest, where they, I don't know if you saw, July of this year, they indicated the variances, it looks like.
Yeah, but which zone are they saying that it is in?
Oh, I have no idea.
If it says that the planning board needs a special permit from the planning.
RM3.
And so that was in July, then how come the September planning board review was for special permit by the planning board, and the notice of determination in the September 23 backup materials did not have it in the RM3? Dennis, do you know?
I can't tell you why something is that I know nothing about, but I'm pulled this one up because that's what I was looking for. This is if you want, I'll email, but this is in the what you mentioned earlier. This is in the September 21 package, and I see it's July 22 where building makes that determination. It goes ZBA.
It's very interesting because I definitely saw the letter, and Ashley even responded to it. She said, yep, that's right. And she told the building department that it should change. So interesting.
Well, this is from the building department, what I'm reading. Its zone is RM3. First page and the second page is RM3. It continues on 2 pages.
Okay, that's great.
What about that? New site, major ZBA variance, consistency review, minor sweat. Okay.
Anyway, we need to have a package. We need to know what is the package.
Yeah.
What are the assets that.
And I think in your letter, Charlie, you should also tell them that we urge them not to take any action so that we can participate in this as an involved agency, even if it's just to provide information, because that's the most helpful thing when another agency comes in and provides it.
The whole purpose of a coordinated review.
Yeah. Okay, which is anything else on that, I assume?
And then also,
yes,
Charlie did point out that it does need to comply with MDL, and we don't have an assessment. And Charlie, I know you had suggested the building department should opine on whether or not there's any modifications required in terms of MDL. Is it something that we could also ask the applicant's architect or engineer to, just like they do zoning and they provide a zoning table, could their certified professionals do the same for MDL?
Absolutely.
That just seems like they would have to put their stamp of approval. They better do the research and find out whether it's compliant or not.
Yep, absolutely.
And that would be for both of these applications, for Van Ranst and for Mamaroneck Avenue. I have additional comments than what I had in our last hearing on 715 Mamaroneck. If Ashley is writing stuff up, should we just send things to Ashley if we have additional comments to include?
Yep, that's appropriate.
well, this is the one that we were going to talk about putting a letter together in it once we get the materials. Oh, because you want to send it to the consultant that they're using?
Charlie said that Ashley has already took a lot of the comments that we made at because we all did discuss 715 Washington, or at least ask questions of the applicant, and I guess made some comments. And from what Charlie said, Ashley is starting to develop something, and that's why I'm saying if she's developing it, I would like to send her more.
Gotcha. Okay. That's now that was 572, right? Van Rest.
No,
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
switched to, because 715 was already in front of us. And so we all asked some questions of the applicant and made some comments ourselves. And it sounds like that's what Ashley is now taking and starting to develop.
Right. Okay. So we're
But
providing.
unlike Van Rest, that we never.
Is there anyone here who feels we should object to, we should try to be lead agency, or we're comfortable the way it is? I mean,
Now that I understand more about the coordinated review and you get to review the non-discretionary permit as well, that seems important.
Okay.
I think that if we could just inform the planning board that we will be sending comments we would hope that they would not get too far along without, considering our comments and suggestions.
Yep, we'll do.
I just want to point out that if you're listening, I offered, Robin said she's going to Spain, so I said, no, I'll go to Spain. She should come to the meeting. I'll deal with that.
Anyone wants to come here and help babysit kids, that's also.
Oh, you're a good man. The last meeting, I was going down to Washington to babysit for grandkids, and I kept trying to connect. And it was one of those, that trip became so annoying. And my wife was gonna throw me out of the car. She's just forget it. We'll take a bus and go back up, take a car and go back up. Because it was like nothing was working. The computer, nothing, I don't know what it was. It must have been the Delaware or something. All right. I think, I'm assuming that there's nothing else on the agenda. Is that correct?
That's right.
Good. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, so to speak. And I hope all is well. Everybody well? Anything else? Move to close on this? Motion? Is a second? Someone say second, then a first. Okay. All in favor can leave. I actually did that once at a meeting. I said, everyone in favor of this, please stand up and leave immediately. I guess so. All right. We're closed.
Okay, thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Brittany.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.